tried to make a video now and was having some difficulties with it, and finally realized that the only way I can actually upload a video is to go live. I guess because I'm doing it from a phone. So I have started a GoFundMe account about a month ago, and kept trying to tell people I was going to make a video to tell the story a little bit better. So that's initially what this first video is going to be about, is the GoFundMe.com/GivePaulBack. And my son and I, our story. I'm very nervous. This is my very first video. Just to give you some information, was in a coma. Let me put the phone down. I was in a coma in 2012, and from that point to this point, had to start life over in every possible way you can imagine. And I will try very hard to not get upset. So please be patient with me, and for the people that have already donated, thank you very much. I appreciate your help. Just to give a little bit of background on myself, I didn't have medical problems until I was 38 years old, and tried to have a second baby. I didn't have my first child until I was 35. I purposely waited so I was older in life, and whether you believe this or not, there are women that can verify this as well. Some women will always know that they're going to have a child and what that child will be. I can't explain that to anyone, but there are women out there that can verify that they always knew they would have a boy, or always knew they would have a girl. I always knew I would have my son. My daughter that I lost was a surprise to me, but I was very happy during both pregnancies. Very happy. And the story I'm going to tell you is very hard to believe. I understand that. If it wasn't my story, it would leave a lot of questions in my mind. I understand that. And this is the first time I've ever really told the story completely. I tried to think of in what way I should tell the story. I really kind of just wanted to get to the part where we're at today, which is the state of Illinois took my child away, my son, my only child. That's why I started the GoFundMe account. Not just to raise money, but also, I don't know how much awareness we have to raise about these issues where people are literally having their children killed and taken away by the state. I can tell you that for me, it's been a long, confusing process, and I'm all alone. I get a little help here and there, advice from strangers. I try to do my best to find temporary work through job sites and that sort of thing. I've tried to get a full-time job. It's very hard. when you've gone through something like I have, um, to reintegrate into society. It was very hard. Um, and it's very hard to try to get any real help from real people. There's plenty of people that are out there that are willing to take full advantage of you, and most of them are state employees, just to be honest. And that's across the board. That's in shelters, that's in hospitals, that's everywhere. Um, so, um, excuse me, this is my very first video, and it's very hard to tell my story. Um, so, just to give you a little bit of the story, in 2012, my son was 2.5 years old. I realized I was pregnant again. I've never been married. And I would really appreciate it if people could hold judgment until you at least hear my story. And I am a real person. So, all I can do is try to explain myself as best I can for decisions I make. I take responsibility for things. I take responsibility for the fact that I became friends with certain people, that I trusted certain people, that that this happened to me at all. I take my part of the responsibility of it. Just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I'll still take the responsibility for that. So, I worked my whole life. Usually had 1.5 jobs, a full-time job and a part-time job. Helped other people in life. Didn't want to get married until I found the right person. Even if that was after I had my child. My child was a definite thing that I just knew was always going to happen. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know if it was going to happen because I was married or not married. And again, I can't explain that to you. The drive that's in a woman. Whatever you want to sum it up to is your decision. But this is all I can tell you is my story, my life. And I always knew from the time I was, in my mid-teenage years, that I was going to have my son. That's just the bottom line of it. So, he was meant to be. I have a lot of love and respect for men. I didn't want anybody to ever feel trapped, regretful. So, the man that came to be on my son's birth certificate was not his biological father. It was a friend of mine that I had known for over 15 years. He had had another child with somebody else early in life. Myself and his friends and his family all helped him with that. I helped him a lot with that. And really cared for this person. And tried to maintain a level of respect with someone that, a friendship means a lot to me. And if we date and it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't mean I won't give you a sandwich if you're hungry. I mean, anyway, this person was never the person I thought they were. And it's very hard. It's very hard for me when I hear people, not now, but at one point it was very hard for me to understand that you could know someone for so long and never know them. So he was very deceitful. And I come from the South. I was born in 73. I grew up in a very different environment from whatever this place is. Um, and life was very different. I'm sorry. I just grew up in different circumstances. And so I never had the impression of men being ultra sensitive. Um, and you combine that with the fact that I really honestly just tried to understand men in a respectful way. Um, so, anyway, um, he really took advantage of me during the time when I was pregnant with actually his baby. Um, at the time my son was born, he was living with me. He had lost the job that I had helped him get, which was fine. It's a shitty job. Um, so we'd always talked about when his child was grown, and we would get married and things like that. And I just always kind of took that as a possibility. And then the possibility I thought it came to be one day. His child was grown. I was having a baby, and then I was, going to be having his baby. Um, so it seemed like we were coming together to form a family. In other words, um, he took full advantage of that. He lied on a lot of things, a lot of paperwork. Um, we were never actually officially married. I've never actually been officially married to anyone. Marriage is a super big deal to me. I think it's a one-time thing. That's my personal opinion. I don't try to force that on the other people, but that's how big of a deal it is to me. Um, because it's not just a promise to another person, it's a promise to God that you're trying to practice loving somebody. So anyway, um, in 2012, around, I guess, February or so, I was at 14 weeks of pregnancy and fine, happy. And these are based on memories that I'm getting back. Okay, just to let you know, I lost all memory. I lost everything. Bodily functions, very physical, what I went through. It was not just a mental thing. It was, death is very physical. That's all I can tell you. So during that time, when I was about 14 weeks of pregnancy, all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I started becoming very sick. I could not eat or drink anything. This happened very rapidly, like literally overnight. This started happening to me. I started blacking out, and I was pregnant. So this was a big concern to me because I didn't want to fall, which I eventually did. For some reason, I remember, I guess because he was working or something, after I started feeling very sick, I started asking him to take me to the doctor, and it went on for a few days. Eventually, he took me to a hospital in Marietta, Georgia, called Kennestone Hospital. If you've ever had any dealings with these people, you can maybe believe what I'm about to say. So he took me to the emergency room. It was late at night. I have information on certain things, so I can back up what I'm saying in a lot of different ways. It's just I'm trying to make this initial video, and the story is long, but I don't know any other way to tell it except from beginning to end. So, the hospital was a joke. The ER visit was a joke. I went in there. It was the first time I actually saw my baby on a sonogram. Um, she popped up from behind, some tissue, and I saw her little black eye pop out. It was the only time I ever got to see her. But she was strong and beautiful. So, everybody even said that in the hospital visit. We don't understand why you're so sick. Because the baby is very strong and healthy. I later realized, and this is just, I've realized this in the past few months from having other people look at my medical documentation that I got copies of before I made this video. There's still a lot more documentations I need to get, that I need to, that's part of what the GoFundMe is for, so that I can continue to just to be able to live day to day, get paperwork, seek out help, that sort of thing. So anyway, everybody just kept reassuring me that the baby was great. And I was in the ER all third shift, pretty much. They let me go when first shift came in, pretty much. They gave me a shot of morphine. I was in so much pain. My body was just constricting and contracting, and I kept passing out. They took blood and things like that. They lied to me, just to let everybody know. Also, just letting everybody know, I know I was supposed to start all this off by saying something of the sort of, this is just my story, this is not meant for legal advice, medical advice, etc., etc. And everything I'm saying here is my story, so I feel like I have a right to tell it. Anyway, the bogus-ass doctor at the Kennestone Hospital place busted into the room right before they discharged me with a card, and this is what happens a lot of times when you go to the ER. They will treat you for a little while, enough to charge the insurance, whatever insurance plan or whatever, and then sends you out of there with a referral to go see another doctor. They make money off of this. Doctors make money off giving referrals and things like that. So the referral apparently was to go see a specialist. This bogus-ass doctor at Kennestone Hospital, who everybody loved, actually told me I had a hereditary disease called hypercilious. He made it up. And I was in a state of condition where I was so sick and in so much pain and fear. I was pregnant. That it didn't occur to me that he was lying to me. And that the word hypercilious really doesn't exist. And if you break it down the way one of the lawyers I talked to, actually wasn't a lawyer, it was a paralegal I was speaking to one day about all this, she brought this to my attention, and it broke my heart. It was the first time I realized that I don't have a hereditary disease that affects pregnancy or whatever. She said, Tracy, think about the word hypercilious. She said, basically, he was telling you that you were extremely sick. And she said, second of all, they're not going to be able to diagnose a hereditary disease during an ER visit. You have to remember, my mind was wiped out, and I had to start over from day one. I had to wear diapers and everything. It was great. I had to learn to walk again. I couldn't write. I didn't know my fucking name sometimes. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. After I became so sick. These are the things that I'm coming back from. That's why I'm explaining that now. just so that while you're watching this, you can keep in mind that I was like a child at one point. Um, I still have a bad tendency to want to trust in people the way children do. So anyway, um, he told me, the doctor at Kennestone Hospital, that they did not admit pregnant women, this is no lie, into Kennestone Hospital until they were 16 weeks of pregnancy. And I was only 14 weeks of pregnancy, so therefore they couldn't admit me. But I could go to this specialist and she could help me with this so-called condition that I apparently had. Okay. So, my jackass ex-boyfriend, this is his baby I'm pregnant with. The one that was on my son's birth certificate. He's not my son's biological father. That's a whole nother story. I can explain that another time. Comes back, picks me up. We get into an argument. The doctor had prescribed a bottle of medication. This is the funny part. I went in there telling these people I was passing out, throwing up, having convulsions, couldn't eat or drink anything, hadn't had anything to eat or drink in like 4 days. Because every time I would try to physically put anything to my mouth, it would make me gag, and then that would be it. I would just start becoming very sick, violently sick. I'll just go ahead and say it now because it's on my mind. I don't think I finished the sentence earlier, but I found out he was poisoning me, basically. And he kind of confirmed it before I left him. His plan, and this is what my ex told me. My ex, who is still running around free in Atlanta, Georgia, probably, maybe has somebody else pregnant now, I don't know. From what other people have told me that have read through the medical documentations, I was being poisoned, pretty much. So, that's all I really say right now. But it's highly possible because I am from the South, and at the time I did drink things like sweet tea and, sweet lemonade and sweet this and sweet that, and apparently coolant that you put in your car is very sweet. And the problems that I have with my body now, like, you apparently can't test me now and just see for sure whether or not it was antifreeze that he was putting in my drinks and stuff. But a few people have looked at it and told me that, because of the severe stomach issues and convulsions that I still have from time to time, I can't allow myself to get too sick, because if I start to throw up too much, it could really end badly. So I have to live with these things. I've had to learn how to adjust my diet. And I had to do all this just from slow motion, correctiveness, finding information, being helped in a library somewhere, strangers on the street, going to see a person at a clinic, a physical doctor. Anyway, that's not even the best part of it. So I got sicker once he took me back home. He had told me, my ex, that his plan was that once I died, he was gonna leave me there on the floor. This is in a trailer park. on Atlanta Road, one of the worst possible areas that you could ever have something like this happen to you, because it's a very criminal type of area, to the point that you have good people there. They get preyed upon because it's the type of area where other criminals will come to that area to commit crime and then go back to their very nice homes and their very nice lives and that type of thing. So there's a lot of issues when you're living there. And, you can ask people for help, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's really going to take you seriously or believe that you're in real danger. Um, so anyway, um, once he took me back home, like I said, his plan was to let me die. And then he said he was going to pick up my son, who was 2.5 years old at the time, and had always been used to having his mother be there for him. I can only give it to God what my son's been through. Um, so, um, he was going to take my son, walk out the door, lock the door behind him. This is what he told me. Lock the door behind him, and go to another place, one of his other girlfriend's houses. And if the police caught up with him, which he was pretty sure they eventually would, ask him some questions about me once they found the body, he was going to tell them that I had thrown him and my only child out, and he didn't hear from me anymore. And they probably would have believed him to a certain point. Um, so that was his genius plan. He had a couple other genius plans along the way. He's kind of cowardly, so, and I'm really loved by God, apparently, to the degree that I didn't even know of. So he takes me back to where we were staying on Atlanta Road. Yes, trailer parks. Yes, poverty. That sort of thing. Um, and we were living off, apparently, money I had saved for a while. That's another story, too. But anyway, so I'm pregnant. So from the initial Kennestone visit up until the point that I made it to Grady Hospital, by the grace of God, was about 5 or 6 weeks, is what I can estimate. When he took me back home, I asked him, it didn't work out. They're supposed to send me to a doctor, blah, blah, blah. He never had any interest of taking me anywhere else. And after that, my phone disappeared. He apparently took my phone somewhere. I'm not sure what he did with it, but I didn't have access to it. I couldn't find it, and he eventually just took everything of mine and would put it away and that sort of thing, so I couldn't get to it without his permission. IDs, my phone, everything. So from the initial Kennestone visit to the Grady visit, like I said, it was about 5 or 6 weeks. I was mostly unconscious. I had actually got up about 4 days after I went to the Kennestone visit to try to make it to the bathroom. I felt sick, and I felt determined. I remember that I needed to get help. So I grabbed a hold of the wall, and I pulled myself up to try to make it to the bathroom and look for my phone. And it was the first time my son had seen me actually move in a few days, probably. He got very excited, jumped up, came running by me, and I fell down. I fell down so hard, and I twisted my body in such a way that it broke my left foot. sort of like this. It's really weird. So I have a limp now. I'm not that cool. I just remember, I don't know how long I was laid. As soon as, before I even hit the floor, I was unconscious. I don't know how long I laid there. I have a memory of him picking me up, and I know I fell down in the daytime, and it was nighttime when he picked me up. So, I don't know. Put me in the bathtub. My foot was completely swollen and blue. His solution to this was to let it soak in hot water. And I became really just more and more unconscious a lot. The very few times I could wake up, it wasn't for very long, and it was usually when somebody was physically disturbing my body. Let's just say that. Because whenever he wanted something, even if I was conscious or unconscious, he would just bathe me off, sort of. So, and I wasn't getting any food or water. This is very important to understand. I was unconscious most of the time, and he was letting me die. So, I was not able to eat or drink anything. By the time I made it to Grady Hospital, I had lost like over 60 pounds in less than a month, or around a month, or 5 or 6 weeks or so. So he was letting me gradually starve to death. And I've always been a little bit chunky. And I can tell you now, I'm better off being a little bit chunky. I didn't like being that skinny. That was very frightening to me, to feel my bones, and it was horrible. I have no memory of going to Grady Hospital 5 or 6 weeks later. What happened apparently, and I only saw her like one time after all of this happened. Someone that he knows, that he's related to, apparently had called him on the phone, and they were talking on the phone. It was late at night, and this person told me that they kept hearing me in the background every few minutes screaming out for help. And apparently they kept asking him what that was about. I have no idea what he told this person. I know that there are people that can clearly see what he did to me that are related to him. And it's fine that they don't want to be involved. I'm not trying to drag people out that don't deserve to be drug out. So, apparently they were on the phone and they kept hearing me scream out. Sorry, it was a gnat. And actually showed up sometime later. Had him put me in their car, and they took me to Grady Hospital. If you don't know Atlanta, Grady Hospital is the largest county hospital in the state of Georgia. It's so massive, the building itself, that there's people that have worked there for years that have not been to all the parts of this hospital. Everything's in-house in this hospital, just to let people know that. A lot of times in county hospitals now, and I don't know for how long it's been going on, but they'll have everything in there. They'll have a food stamp outlet. They'll have a DCFS outlet. Yes, they do. All kinds of things. Pretty much a whole section dedicated to abortions, type of thing. I don't know why people think that all women, and I'm one of them, who have had an abortion forced on you against your will. I don't know why the perception is that for some reason I, as a woman, or any woman, a normal, regular woman, um, like we get some kind of notice in the mail that they're going to vote on abortion that day or some shit. They don't tell us things like that. We're the victims. There aren't as many women out there choosing that for themselves. They might have it chosen for them. I'll say that. It's very deceptive. And like I said, all I can tell you is tell my story. So it's my story. And it pertains to this hospital, Grady. I have no memory of being taken there. My ex, actually took a photograph of me. And I'm sort of in a incapacitated state, so I'm not going to show the picture right now. I don't know why he took a photograph of me. Last photograph he was going to ever take of me, I guess. He said a bunch of shit before I left him. I don't know. He's a very sick person. Oddly enough, works at a pizza place. No shit. Anyway, that's not a lie. I just actually put that together. So I, somewhere in there, actually fell into an actual coma for about 3 days after being incapacitated, not fed, and, blacked out, pregnant for 5 or 6 weeks. People always ask me, how long were you in the coma? And when I say 3 days, they're like, oh. Which really cracks me up. It so cracks me up. I'm just like, you don't understand the disconnection that your mind, body goes through during this process, whether you're put into a coma, for diabetic reasons or whatever. It's a horrifying PTSD type of situation, and it's really frightening because a lot of times people go home and their families don't know how or what to expect after this happens. Anyway, there's a lot I can say about it. So during the Grady visit, and you have to keep in mind that I don't believe that every person is a bad person. What I have learned is that I have to keep in mind where you work and who you work for, and no matter how much I might think you're funny or would like to get a cup of coffee with you or whatever, I have to keep these things in mind, now who I'm dealing with, because people are so deceptive. It's a shame. So during the Grady visit, I woke up and they were not expecting me to wake up. I'll just say that. When I first opened my eyes, I was tied down to a bed, and I was on a feeding tube. I had 6 IVs in me. I was on catheters. I didn't wake up knowing shit. Literally knew nothing when I first woke up. So after a few hours went by, and it's weird because that's literally the first thing the nurse says to me when she finally noticed my eyes was opened. She was in the room doing some stuff, and the TV was on. And if anybody's in a coma, it's very important to try to reach them through sound. And if they're deaf, touching their hands. It's very important to do these things to keep the brain aware of there's something outside of itself. Otherwise, you will die. So, And I say that now because a lot of hospitals are stopping doing this thing where they have someone in the room, actually a physical person in the room, monitoring someone in a coma. There's a lot of them that are actually not doing that now. They just are leaving people in there, and there's, I'm sure, some that have been doing that, where they'll just leave someone who's been in a coma or in a coma alone in a room. This is not good. Um, there's a lot I can say about that from just the experience. So I don't blame everybody for the things that happened to me. You know, the lady that came in and would put warm sheets on my bed because I had no internal thermostat that was reliable, really. My body, I had started to die, literally, and died at one point, apparently, and came back. So, um, when your heart stops and things like that, you know, your body will get very cold very fast. And you can't just come back from that. You will literally need heat therapy, which they were sort of doing. This lady, she was wonderful. She would come in every couple of hours and literally change my bed sheets while I was laying in the bed. Um, and she would always bring me fresh sheets right out of the dryer, which actually did help to stimulate my nerve endings in my body to a certain degree. Um, I can only tell you that this is a deep belief of mine in a poem. Um, and I can't quote you the whole poem, but it's something, it is a memory that I got back. And it's been in a movie. I know people have told me, oh, yeah, that's in that movie. Maybe because I used to watch the movie, that's why it's stuck in my head. But it's very important to remember that in death, you fight it. You don't go gently into that good night. That poem means so fucking much to me. Um, so, and you have to fight off death with life, you know? So, anyway, she would come in and put hot sheets on the bed. Um, little things mean a lot to actually heal people from from dying, from a lot of things, little things, very human things, very common sense things, uh, not a million state ran, state paid for people with their own agendas. You know, this woman was very sweet to me, and she would talk to me. Um, actually, talk to me, even though she knew I couldn't respond. And then I would try to respond. Um, so anyway, she made a big difference to me. There were other people at the hospital that really took advantage of me, as I'm sure they take advantage of other women in that situation. And I was essentially left there alone. Um, and just because, you know, you tell, or just because they might have a history of a contact list doesn't mean they're going to reach out to your relatives or your friends or anybody on your contact list. That doesn't always happen. And that's a very scary thing, and that's very real. I tell people all the time now, don't go to the hospital alone. Don't even go to the doctor alone if you don't have to. Always have someone there with you. Someone who's on your side, legitimately on your side, not paid for by somebody. Um, so during this hospital stay, like I said, when I first woke up, the nurse looked at me and she was like, oh, honey, you know, we didn't think we'd ever see you again. And gradually, during that first day, I had tried to set up, I had tried to speak. Um, I remember at one point I actually was so hungry and didn't comprehend that I was hooked up to a feeding tube. Didn't comprehend what the tube in my neck was at all. And no one's telling me anything. No one's explaining shit to me. I'm just tied in a bed and things are going on around me. And eventually, I think someone, said the name of the hospital. Um, so, it's not very informative when you wake up alone in a hospital and no one's talking to you very much. Um, I sat up. I actually asked for food. It was one of the first things I could say. Um, and I knew I was pregnant. Um, this was hours after I woke up. This was a very gradual day. So this was like early morning to afternoon, back into the evening. So I had sat up as best I could. I had asked for food. They had actually brought me a plate of food, even though they knew I couldn't eat it. I was hooked up to a feeding tube anyway. But psychologically, I guess they thought it might help me just to see actual food. Um, Everything in that hospital smelled like death. I could never eat anything in that hospital, no matter what they brought me. I was literally on the feeding tube almost to the last day that I was there. And even after that, I still couldn't really eat anything. Everything smelled like death. That's all I can say to you. It's very hard to go back to eating after you haven't had anything for a long time, and then it makes you very incapacitated. It worsens your state of mind to go without food and water. Um, the reason I'm saying this is because it's very easy to just write people off as crazy, and maybe they just need a fucking candy bar. Um, Hunger can affect you like that. Um, so, and I was pregnant. Um, so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, it occurs to me to ask, or say something, and I looked down at my stomach, and I was like, baby. And nobody really wanted to address the issue the first day when I was very active. I don't want to give you the wrong impression about being very active, but I wasn't dead anymore, okay? And I was trying to make communication with people. And I really didn't understand what had happened to me, and I didn't even understand why I couldn't really speak that well. And then when I would try to talk, um, people would seem to get upset with me. I don't know why. So there are people that work at the hospital that change your sheets and do very basic things like that. I'm not saying all of them people are bad guys or anything. This goes up into the administrators of a hospital, um, your actual doctors that are caring for you. Um, and I just want to say, by this whole race thing that's going on now, um, thanks a lot, Jesse. I live in Chicago. Like, life isn't hard enough, motherfucker. Um, I'm like one of 2 Trump supporters in all of Chicago, and thank God I don't know the other guy. Because if we ever happen to meet, we're dead, apparently. And I don't look at people in that way. I feel like we all get upset at one another. We all say things that, in the moment you're just trying to let go of a little misunderstanding, anger, hostility, whatever you. This is normal, okay? This is not a. Normal people are not as racist as everybody wants to claim they are. And it makes me really sad. Um, You know, I was attacked by white people, black people, Asian people, Mexican people. I've also been helped by white people, black people, Asian people, Mexican people. Okay. So I really don't try to look at my situation from that perspective. It's very hard. I could easily sit here and say, you know, oh, this person hurt me and they were white, or this person hurt me and they were black. Look, it was a mix. It was a mix of folks. It was a mix of folks in each of my situations. Sometimes there were more black people than other people. Sometimes there were more of this or that. I mean, it's way more to that than anything, is what I'll say. So, I just look at you as either a potentially alright person. I can get along with you. You're cool. Um, you don't seem like you're going to hurt me or my children. Or you're an asshole and I don't want to be around you. And who cares? Let's just go about our own way. So anyway, back to the hospital. My story really bothers me. I have to break it up sometimes. So, they, after they came in the room, my doctors and such, they started giving me cups of pills, which made me go back to sleep. And actually put me back into a point where I was unconscious again for the most part. Which to this day, I get why it was done now. But for the longest time, you have to understand, all these questions have been in my mind. And then I have to deal with the very day basic trying to go on with my struggles, like everybody else. Work, try to find work, this or that, anyway. They would come in and give me cups of pills every few hours. And this made me unconscious again. It kept me asleep. They would come in and do a sonogram on me, which would make me wake up, and be at my bedside with a little bedside monitor, computer-looking thing, doing the sonogram on my stomach, and I would try to reach up to touch this thing so I could see it, and they would snatch it away or move it away so I could never see my baby again. And I didn't get to ever see her again after the first time I saw her. To me, there's no explanation for this at all. So, after a couple days went by, and they kept me unconscious, every time I would wake up and start to move around, they would come back in with a cup full of pills, and it would cause me to go back asleep. There was a group of people that came in my room. Administrators, my two main female doctors, and a few people that were there who had actually been there when my son was born there. And they were all standing around me, around my bed. I had been asleep. They had, like I said, they kept me asleep a lot, and would come in and do things to me, and this would wake me up out of my unconscious state. So that day, and you have to understand, I had no real body ability to move around too much after they started giving me these cups of pills. So I couldn't sign my signature. And when I got my medical documentations, there's nothing in there with my signature on it for anything. These administrators sat by my bedside, like I said, along with my two main doctors. I had just came to, and nobody had still yet fully explained anything to me. Was recovering from some very horrible things, still not able to eat anything on the feeding tube. They woke me up to let me know, and I did not comprehend at that time what the word abortion meant, what the word sterilization meant, what really any of that shit meant, to be honest with you. I just knew that there was suddenly a group of people around me, and they were informing me of things, procedures. That's all they kept saying were procedures. We're going to perform a procedure on you, and the whole conversation would have the word procedure in it. And literally, they said abortion one time at the end of the conversation. The procedure is going to be an abortion, and then you will come back 3 weeks later, and we will sterilize you. The person was literally standing there holding my hand, trying to forge my signature, which was a joke because my hands were very like this, which is something that happens to you when you're very dehydrated. And it would have been really impossible for me to try to hold anything. And this was something that they kept arguing about throughout the time I was in this hospital, was the fact that I couldn't sign my signature. They tried to get my ex to sign paperwork, and he refused. He didn't want his signature on anything, yet he told these people he was my husband. And they knew he wasn't my actual husband. But regardless of whether or not we were actually married or not, I mean, the condition I came to the hospital in, I'll just say, how could you look at that and not question it? And then the man disappeared, and he came back once, and then they got into an argument with him, and then he disappeared again and didn't come back until they told him over the phone they were going to release me to him. So anyway, my point being, they forged my signature, and I didn't understand the conversation that we were having, and they kept me drugged purposely. Next day, this is what happened. Later that night, because they told me they were going to do the abortion the next day, and then they told me that 3 weeks after they released me from the hospital, remember? 3 weeks after, I would come back, and then they would supposedly do this thing called sterilization. It was another procedure. I had no idea what these people were saying to me. I didn't really half the time know my name. And I would sometimes say things that they would count as a conversation, but they were also giving me pills to put me back under. In a large variety of medication. So, later that night, I woke up screaming. The nurse came in, and she was one of the nurses. Like I said, she did things like change the sheets and stuff. She's a very nice lady, older lady. And I said the word to her. I said, I don't understand. They're going to take my baby. I was crying. I was hysterical. Because it was very few and far in between times that my brain would actually be able to communicate back in a way that it acknowledged what was going on, I guess, is the way that I can explain it to you. And she came in and she was like, she patted my hand, and she gave me, she said, I'm going to go get the other nurse to come give you some of your medication. And she was like, don't be upset, don't be upset. She was just very brief, but tried to be helpful, nice. They came in with more medication. I went back to sleep. Woke up the next day, once again, not understanding what the fuck was going on. They literally had to pick my whole body up. It would take like 3 or 4 dudes um, to make sure that you're moved properly. From the table to the stretcher, to move me from one room for a procedure to another room for a procedure. I couldn't move my body very much on my own. All I know is they took me, I was very out of it. They took me to another room. I was crying, but I couldn't move. They put me from the stretcher onto another table, tied me down again. Women get tied down a lot in hospitals. And the hospital will say, well, it's, it's so that they it's for everybody's safety. It's so that you don't cause yourself injury and things like that. Look, I can say a lot of shit. I can make a lot of points about a lot of things. And several of my points could be very true. Doesn't necessarily mean that's your entire agenda. So I was tied down a lot. But, so they tie you down to this bed, they strap you down. They strap down your legs. It's a big machine that comes down, does what it does. Lots of blood loss. And my baby was gone. And, so, for the rest of my fucking life, if anybody looks at my medical records, they'll say, oh, look, she had an abortion. And they'll actually count that as me being personally in favor of it, as if I chose it consciously knowing exactly what was going on. And that's a total fucking lie. And I don't really give a shit anymore. I'm poor. They don't give a fuck about us. They know we can't fight them in court. And Jesus Christ, I mean, they lie. Every fucking court that you look at these days, they're lying. They're just fabricating shit. So, it's kind of a joke to me now when I hear somebody say, oh, they're going to sue somebody. Okay, buddy. You don't really understand the fight you're in for. Or maybe you do, but you have enough money to cover your ass. So, those are your two choices. So there's no me fighting these people other than to just tell my story and to try to warn people. This really did happen to me, and this really is fucked up. And I would have never chose abortion. I'm pro-life all the fucking way. And you can sit there with your little fairy tales in your mind about possible scenarios of why abortion is so necessary in life. And I'll tell you, fuck you. Because I have a right to do so. She's gone forever. That was not my choice. In any fucking way at all. That was not my choice. And what fucks me up so bad about it is I was so confused for so long and very hurt by it. I couldn't really talk about it until today. It's very shameful that somebody could look at my medical documents and see that in there and have a totally wrong perception of me as an individual. Um, it really hurts my heart to this fucking day. The other women are probably going through this too. And the scariest thing to me now is, this late term abortion shit. It's been going on, dudes. You have no idea how it feels. I mean, whether you have family or not, to go into a hospital as a woman, a pregnant woman, and try to receive help to save yourself and your baby. And they fucking abort your baby. And then give you back to the person that they know has abused you. And that's the reality of it. We're not out here, no real woman. Look, I know women that were guilted into having abortions. Oh, look, you got so many kids. What do you need one more for? That's fucked up. And the woman I met that told me her story, I know it breaks her heart to this day that she made that choice. She made that choice consciously, though, even though she was guilted into it. I, on the other hand, and I'm sure there are a lot of women who've experienced this that are terrified to tell their story. Or maybe they're dead. Um, who have had abortion forced on them through doctors, through hospital situations. More abortions are performed at hospitals than any of these so-called little clinics, which half the time these clinics, so-called clinics, aren't, there's not one on every corner like a fucking McDonald's like everybody thinks. I mean, what are you people thinking? People are being attacked at the hospital. You don't have to go to an aftercare clinic. Or to me, these clinics, on the one hand, are supposedly there for the general public and things like that, to be easier for you to get in and out of, but it's kind of all the same to me. And then they kind of just redirect you back to the hospital anyway. Getting back to my horrible story. Yeah. So I would never agree to abortion. I didn't agree to an abortion. Other women told me, or have told me over the past few years, their stories about how they lost children, miscarried at the hospital, and buried their babies, which really confused the fuck out of me. I was like, they really let you take your baby home? Your dead baby home and bury it? I didn't know. That's how much I hate abortion. Whether my baby had actually, and I felt like my baby was still surviving inside of me. She was very strong. I survived it. Why couldn't have she survived what happened? You feel very chemically different as a woman when you're pregnant and when you're not pregnant. There is a distinct chemical difference that you will realize is going on, which is what leads most women to be concerned and go to a doctor. I'm not feeling very well. You feel pregnant. You feel not pregnant. That's real. Okay, it's chemistry. Of course, it's real. Apparently, when they aborted my baby, they also went ahead and sterilized me as well. Never told me they did that. Remember? The man had said that was some type of procedure they were going to do 3 weeks after I got released from the hospital and came back for a checkup. No, they did it all in one swoop, on the machine. It's a part of the abortion machine. This is a machine that comes down and does these things to you. Not just an actual person. They actually have machines now that do that. They feel, I guess, either they're down there. There was 2 doctors. Like I said, I was tied down to a bed. This machine was lowered down in front of me. Huge fucking machine. and these uh, two doctors were down there as well, doing whatever it is they do to kill your baby. So that's what I remember. And apparently they sterilized me at that moment as well. How they sterilized me, I'm not quite sure. I know basically that means they cut your tubes, or there's several different ways, but no one gave me information afterwards that they had done this to me. They just sent me back on my way. There are people that have tried to use my story against me, that have tried to say that these medical documents were, I was in a mental home. I was never in a mental home. I wasn't even in the hospital before this happened to me. I don't have a record like that, and it even states that in the medical records that I have now. Other than giving birth to my son, that was the only other time that I was at that hospital. And I would have never went back there, remembering what I remember now. So yeah, they did things to me. And then they, of course, kept giving me cups full of pills, cups full of pills, cups full of pills, all the way up until the time I was discharged. And I, to this day, don't know what all that medication was. And I'm not a type of person that took a lot of medication or anything like that. I don't take a lot of medication like that. I don't like it. I'll take Tylenol if I have a headache, or aspirin or something like that. But anyway, my legs hurt. So they released me back to this motherfucker. I wasn't able to really walk. They sent me home with a walker, which he later got rid of. And I used my son's stroller to balance and to walk around a lot. So for 3 years, until I escaped him, was a whole progression of basically me starting over as a child. I had to wear diapers, like I said, all of that good stuff. So that was the first year. The first year literally felt like every day was confusion. I would ask him questions like, is this real? Did I live? Am I really here? And during the whole process, I see this little boy. I know that we belonged together somehow, but I honestly, God, couldn't remember my son for the longest time, who he really was. I couldn't remember giving birth to him during that first year, but he was someone that I felt very protective of, and I knew his name. But to get any real memory of him back just started occurring really over this past year. I started really getting my memories back. And they're not all back. And I've been through a lot. It's been a lot of confusion. And I actually kind of thank God that no professionals cared about me to a certain degree. Because God help me if they had gotten their hands back on me again. Who knows where the hell I'd be right now. Thanks to that good old Obamacare and shit. Boy, they went nuts during that shit. That kind of gave the administrators at hospitals just do what you want. They believe in that shit. So for the first year, I was very much like a child. I had to learn how to re-walk and everything. And he kind of didn't know what to do with me. I think he was half amazed that he was very amazed that I kept living through things. I'm amazed. Truly amazed by it. In a very personal way. So, he was very abusive. Beat my ass a lot. Lied to me about who I was. hid my shit from me. I lost all contact with anybody I ever knew. There was one nice lady who saw me and my son out one day because he was such an asshole. Like he would get very angry with me and tell me I needed to go make money, and I had no idea what the fuck money was that first year, especially. Um, you could literally give me money and I would play with it. I didn't understand what the hell it was. I was a child again, taking care of my son who was also a child. So that was kind of how he left us to run around in this trailer park um, that first year, and then he moved us around. Anytime people would start to take real notice of us, he would want to move us, and sorry, I had to adjust my phone. I don't understand sometimes what the phone's telling me. Um, he would keep us hidden from people, the very few people we were able to speak to. Um, he didn't like that very much, and so after a few conversations, things would kind of get turned off. He would be very rude to people to scare them away so that they wouldn't really talk to us. And the only thing that you knew was there was this lady and her son walking around in this trailer park, and you couldn't really understand what was wrong with us. I was having to learn how to speak again, to talk again, and I was in shock, um, physical shock. So he got the better of me for 3 years. And you have to keep in mind, we didn't have a television, we didn't have things like that. We had a little TV with a DVD player that he would play his movies on, but he only had like 2 or 3 movies, and so that was the extent of anything. And I couldn't really watch, and I still really can't watch a lot of bright lights and things like that, television. I've only been to the movie theater like 3 times since all this happened, and each time I have to sit all the way in the back. And then I still get upset. I get triggered by sounds and things like that. And it makes it very difficult to try to have a job. But that doesn't mean that you should just cart me away and throw me away. So, anyway, it was a very slow process over those 3 years, and at one point he had moved us into a little extended stay hotel type of situation, and over those 3 years of being in that general area, people like firemen, librarians, people we would come in contact with, police officers, would see us out, me and my son, walking down the street with a garbage bag, collecting cans, because it was the only way I knew how to get this thing called money, was to take the cans to a recycling center. And all my neighbors did this. That's why I started doing it. They started helping me do it when they realized he was beating my ass and demanding money from me. Other people become sympathetic to you on a certain degree. Sometimes to take advantage of you, sometimes because they're really nice. But anyway, I hope this video is going alright. I really don't want to have to tell this story again. I've tried to make this video so many times. So it was a combination of things. It was people helping me, giving me cans, giving me a ride to the recycling center. Just gradual, hey, how are you doing? What are y'all doing out here? Type of conversations I would have with people that slowly started to wake me up to what was really happening to me. And I guess caused my brain to become a little bit older and a little bit older. So from like 2 or 3 to like 4 or 5, and then 6 and 7, my awareness, intelligence level I guess, type of thing. And I don't mean that in a bad way towards children. Children are highly intelligent. I'm just saying that that was the type of situation I was in. And then the physical problems I was having made it hard to think physically for your brain to be able to actually work, to make the connections. um, so he moved us into that little extended stay. It was the first time that we had real television, which like I said, I had difficulty actually watching it at first. It was bright, it was loud. But my son wanted to watch cartoons, and a lot of times he would be watching cartoons, and he would learn how to flip through the channels. And he kept leaving it on, like, the news channel for some reason. I guess which was right next to his cartoon channel. So, there was a show that used to come on, which my ex absolutely hates. Because it was the first show that I could actually watch. And I could watch it. And I started watching. It was by accident. My son had left the channel on one day. And the man was talking. And so I'm affected a lot by sound and lights and things like that. So this man's voice was actually very pleasant to me. And even though I couldn't directly look at the television screen, I could listen to his voice. So it started out like that, where I would be washing dishes or playing on the floor with my baby. And the TV would just be running in the background. And he wasn't interested in it anymore, so he didn't care what was on it. And this show would come on. The man said something phenomenal one day that really broke through my brain. And I don't want to give anybody the impression like I'm able to watch television. I'm not able to watch television. I don't own television. But at that time, we had a television in the hotel room. So I haven't actually watched this show in quite a while. This would have been 2015, going into 2016, when I actually escaped from him. The man on the TV show apparently was arguing with another man. And this is what he said. He said, my mother taught me that men have an obligation as men to speak to women in a certain way. And to this day, I feel this crack go through my brain. It was a true phenomenon to me to hear somebody say that, to hear a man say that. It cracked through to the fact that the way I was being treated and what had happened to me was very wrong, even though I couldn't remember all the details of everything at that moment. The way that this man was treating us was wrong. The way he spoke to us was wrong. And now I had this other man confirming that to me, because I had been thinking for a while, I don't understand why this guy acts this way. Why is he so mean to us? He knows I'm sick. I don't understand it. I literally had lost memory. I'd lost memory of what had happened from before the coma. I lost understanding. He was our whole world. He was our only connection to anyone real. For me and my son for 3 years. So from the time my son was 2.5, 3 years old till he was 6 years old, this man kept us really from interacting with most people, and he would take my son around his friends, his little girlfriends and buddies and shit like that, and show him off. He really used my son like a meal ticket as me, but it really hurts me more that he did to my son. And so when the man on television on the TV show said that that men have an obligation as men to speak to women in a certain way, it blew my mind, literally open, tore it apart. And over the next few days,
Um, I became obsessed with trying to watch television, even though it was painful at times. Like the commercials that suddenly come on, the loud noises, the lights, these things bother me. And I found a few other shows, just random things, um, that started to open up my mind to the fact that me and my son needed to get the hell away from this person, that he was mistreating us um, severely, and that he wasn't joking about killing us. The things he was saying to us were not a joke. He had actually found another apartment, which I believe he still lives there. Um, and he took me to this apartment to show me this is going to be the new place we were going. If you looked out the back door of this apartment, um, 285 is right there. And he had been saying things to me at one point in Atlanta. I don't know if this still happens, but I think it was back in the 90s. At one point in Atlanta, people were throwing bodies onto 285. And they still do, I'm pretty sure. But it was really bad back then. And so he kept making comments about this. And then it was right there. 285 was right there. It was a little ghetto-ass apartment. And he made it very clear to me that I would be surrounded by black people who would not give a fuck about a white woman turning up dead right there in their neighborhood. Now, I don't feel that way. I don't believe all black people hate all white people. I know there's people that hate each other that are black and white. But that was something else that he kept saying to me that just kept clicking in my head is really wrong. Like, why would you think that everybody would hate me the way that you do? So it was about a week there of just bombs going off in my head. And I think he was planning on really doing away with me once and for all. And keeping my son. That was initially his whole plan the whole time. He had done things like stupid things. He had tried to get other females to beat me up in the neighborhood. And he would try to make it so that things would happen to me that made it look like there was, maybe somebody else potentially involved. He constantly told people I was crazy. That's why I couldn't speak very well. A whole bunch of stuff. I can't only imagine the shit that he must have told his boss, because his boss actually bought him a plane ticket to come to Chicago last year. Thanks a lot. I ran from the man for a fucking reason. Did that ever occur to you, buddy? Thanks for buying him the plane ticket that brought him to the place I ran away to. And by the way, the night I left him, he came home drunk as shit, fucked up. I don't know what all he was on, what all he was doing. I know he was so far gone, because it was late at night the day I left him. My son and I had been in this hotel room all day, waiting for him to come home, bring us some food, that sort of thing. He showed up late as fuck. And he was sloppy that day. And I really feel sorry for any woman that enters his life from this point on, because I might be the last one that escaped with my life. He's horrible. He's a fucking monster. And I'll just say this. His name is also Paul. He lives in Atlanta, and he works at a pizza place. So if you're dating anybody with those 3 traits, fuck away from him. He came home sloppy drunk. He literally had a bottle of whiskey, whatever this size is. I don't drink. I'm not against anybody who drinks. If you're an adult, you're an adult. If you're not, you're not. Okay? That's just all I can tell you. I'm not here to try to preach to people like that. I have to move. My legs are asleep. So,
Um, oh, and this is the part that I forgot to tell about the hospital. The day that I got out of the hospital, they released me to him. Like I said, it was late at night. It was after midnight when they actually released me back to him. But the daytime doctor had came in that day. Last day I was there. Um, this is how I know for sure they knew he was abusing me. Because at that point, I could speak a little, but I really couldn't speak a lot. So I would, do the head shake and whatever. So one of my two primary um, came in the room. She sat down beside my bed, and she was asking me a series of questions like, you don't seem very happy to go home. Was exactly what she asked me in one of her questions. And I just sat there and I looked at her, and I remember I shook my head like this. And long story short, the woman had told me that she was going to actually help me and keep me at the hospital a few more days. Later that night, they released me back to him. What does that tell you? I'm not the only woman from Grady Hospital that this has ever happened to. Um, anyway, back to him. He came home that night, fucked up, chugged the bottle of whiskey in front of me. When I asked him where the food was, he was like, I didn't bring it in. Okay, buddy. Chugged the bottle of whiskey, fell backwards on the bed. Now, there's one bed in this room, and there's 3 people. And it's like after midnight. And me and my son are hungry as shit. And all day long he had been telling us, he was going to bring us food. But I'm coming back in 20 minutes with some food. No. Because I could have gone out panhandling, which is something else I did besides collect cans. I panhandle. I panhandle to this day. I don't give a shit. When it's necessary, when I can't find work, when I need $3 to get on the bus to go to a job. Um, I'm sorry. So he chugged the whiskey and was very sloppy. He left all this shit out and unlocked. And you have to understand, this is a man that wouldn't give me a fucking dollar. Um, and some of it was my dollars. He did shit like claim us on his tax returns as his family for like 3 years. He had us on a food stamp card with his name on it. He got a lot of charity. And we really didn't see shit. We got by on very little. Anyway, he just got the taxes back. His tax returns back. That's how he was going to afford to move to this new apartment. And he kept the money in a bank account. Kept it all away from me. Kept my identification. He had actually got me a phone at one point, a government phone with my name on it. Had me go get one. Beat my ass until I went to go get one, okay? I go get this government phone. The reason I didn't want to get it was because I knew he was going to take it from me, and he did. I don't know who he was giving these fucking phones to, for what, but anytime I had access to a phone or my identification, he would only give me my identification when he would force me to go out and try to do a job interview at some place like McDonald's or something where he knew it was a joke and they weren't going to fucking hire me anyway. He just did anything to aggravate me, beat my ass, cause me pain. So he left the money and everything out that night. He left some of the money out. And this is somebody that, out of the tax return, had already spent a bunch of money. He got his new apartment. And by the way, he kept telling me these things were his, not mine. I was simply allowed to be there. And that, he and my son, he constantly was trying to separate psychologically me and my son from one another.
as if, my son was property that he owned, um, type of shit. So I sat there. Like I said, I had broken through, because of the one TV show, and then over the past 3 or 4 days, I had seen other shows. The one show that really broke my heart that I saw, and like I said, I didn't understand TV Guide. Okay, I'm just flipping through channels for sounds and sights. Once my brain became curious again. Um, the last television show I watched before we left, that actually played that night while he was gone. My son had laid down for a little while and went to sleep. Um, it was a domestic violence show. Um, and I was flipping through channels, just randomly looking for stuff, and I came across this. And I remember the first thing that I saw was flashing lights, and flashing lights have different effects on me. As far as like ambulances and stuff like that. um, so anyway, on this TV show, that was the first thing you saw was these flashing lights on an ambulance, and I stopped and started watching it, and it was the story of this mom and her son, and I think she had a couple more kids, but her youngest son. Anyway, the family had been attacked by the husband, boyfriend. He killed them all. Um, the thing that fucks with me to this day, the little boy was so terrified when he died. He had bit off some of his own fingers. I'll never fucking forget that story. He was so terrified. He bit off his own fucking fingers. I said, get the fuck out of here. I gotta go. And I looked at my son who was awake. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning at this point. My ex had came in, like I said, passed out on the bed, didn't move again. Whatever he was fucked up on, he was gone. He'll probably tell you this to this day. He regrets getting that fucked up that night. But it was all in the hands of God. So anyway, um, and it just all came about that night. And this was in March of 2016. So I grabbed my son. I didn't know what we were doing. I just knew that the Greyhound station in Atlanta was the only thing open, because it was the only thing that was ever open besides like Waffle House, as far as people like me can afford and have capabilities of, you know. Anyway, um, so I took what money I could. It was technically our money. He made that money off of us, claiming us on his tax returns. He had already spent the money that he wanted to spend on his new apartment, paying his electric bill. He had food. I did not leave this man stranded, okay? I I, I saw an opportunity and God said go, and I left. And I grabbed what I could. And this was basically money he was just going to play with anyway. All right? So we left with a few $100s. I ran out of the extended stay place in Marietta. The only thing that was open was up the road. There's usually always a Bell's Bondman open, or a gas station. Um, Ran there. Had them call me a cab. Got in the cab. Had the cab take us to Atlanta. We literally walked into the Greyhound bus station and went up to the counter, and I told him, I said, what's the next bus leaving? And it was for Chicago. So that's literally how we ended up in Chicago. We were trying to run from this man. And I was terrified. I was on the run. I mean, he could have woken up at any moment, as far as I was concerned. And Atlanta's not a very big place. And if you're from there and you know the place, then you know that people at 2 o'clock in the morning only have so many options of where to go. Um, so, anyway, we got on the bus and we got the hell out of there. And it wasn't after until we got probably to the other side of Tennessee that I actually started to feel like we might have a chance. Um, Once we arrived in Chicago, it was nighttime. It was cold. We had holes in our shoes. We had basically summer clothes on. We came from Georgia. March in Georgia is not the same type of March that it is in Chicago. Um, so whatever money I had to begin with, it went to getting, us clothes. And I didn't know where thrift stores were. So I had to go to like Target and pay, full price for things. And the first week we were here, I didn't know how to get into a shelter. I didn't know shit about shelters. We don't have shelter systems in Georgia. Those are bogus. If you see a shelter in Georgia, it's bogus. It's not the same concept as shelters in Chicago. It's a totally different concept. Because I did look into that before we left. What kind of help could I get from there? And outside of just very local help, which I greatly appreciated, people watching over us. Because, like I said, not all people are bad, you know. There are good and bad out there as well. You just have to keep that in mind. That goes across the board from gangsters to cops. That's across the board. So I appreciate all gangsters and cops who have ever helped me, and they've both helped me. If that's the way you want to look at people in life. And it was all kind of a miracle when we got to Chicago. I didn't know shit about Chicago at all. And we were put off downtown. Um, the place we were, the Greyhound station, the train is below there. So all that I really knew was that Chicago was a big city and that we could probably sleep on the train because I had heard that their trains, some of their trains were 24 hours. And that was the only thing I had that I knew to go on the first day we got here. And literally, it was a lady working at the CTA. We went downstairs to get a ticket to understand how to get on the train. She helped us. She saw us. My son had like a big hole in his shoe, and it's kind of obvious we weren't from Chicago. She gave me a map of the city. She put in a phone call. I mean, this woman was an angel. I have not seen her ever again, and I will never forget her. Very sweet, um, big black lady that just happened to be working just happened to be. Just, our paths crossed, and she helped me. And, she knew a place that we could go and stay, a hotel where we could go and stay, where you can actually rent a bed, not a room. And that's where we went. And the man that runs that hotel is very, very, very good Christian type of person. Um, she had put in a phone call. Apparently, they know each other from church or something. But the CTA lady had actually called over there at one point. And so we went there and got a room. You could get a room for, or you could rent a bed for $40 or $50 a day. And it gave you access to a bathroom, a shower, and breakfast. They had food there. So that was my budget. And so for the first little bit of time we were here, and from that, um, they put us in touch with the police department, um, and the police department helped us find a shelter. Um, it was temporary shelter at first, and then we got moved into a permanent shelter. My first shelter in Chicago, they were very, very good to us overall. Every shelter you go to, it has problems. You have different people that are there. You have strangers. The public's constantly coming in. You don't know who your new roommate might be. It's a very difficult situation, and all shelters are very different. Um, from one place to another. You can go to some shelters and they feed you, and then they don't allow you to bring food in, but they feed you. And you can go to other shelters where they don't feed you and they expect you to have your own food. They're very different. The first one I was at was a Hispanic, mostly Hispanic shelter, um, and they really helped us a lot. And I wish they had not closed down. It was when they closed down that we were taken to our second shelter, or I say second shelter, but it wasn't our second shelter. What I mean is second permanent shelter, not just a couple of days where you're staying there for a few days or something. Because sometimes you have shelters that you go to for a few days while you're looking for a permanent shelter. Um, so we were brought to this other shelter, which I call a whorehouse. And um, I will tell you, these people are not legit. They misused all their funding, as far as I'm concerned. They they're corrupt shelter in every way you can imagine. And so while I was there, you have to keep in mind I worked my whole life. Okay, so I've never been having to live like this. You know, food stamps and funding and things like that. This is kind of new to me over the past few years since all of this happened to me. Before that, like I said, I worked, paid for everything, my own stuff. My legs are asleep again. So at this second permanent shelter, let's just call it that, the second permanent shelter, um, and boy, they primo great over there. They primo. Yeah. If you've ever had to deal with them, you know how great they really fucking are, don't you? Once I got a way to get my own place through assistance, and these people are there just to introduce you to other government agencies that are supposed to be there to help you, okay? They're like a middleman. That's supposed to be the end of it for them, okay? What these people do, what they did to us, and I know what they've done to other people, because I've heard other people, I've met other people in the street that stayed in this shelter with similar stories to mine about how they were lied about, and how the shelter tried to act like it helped them way more than it did so that they could get more funding. That's the bottom line of it. That's the honest to God truth. This place, this particular place. And they have 3 locations. And they're pretty, they're pretty wrapped up with some higher up charities here in Chicago, apparently. And they've come at me from every direction. They literally send people out of the shelter to come harass me to this day. I have told people about this. I've complained about this. I'm waiting to see what's going to happen with a lot of things. But I have tried to tell different people about this particular shelter. So the time period that we left the shelter, was in April. Okay? So the reason why that's important is because after the first of the year, just like every other business, they start new paperwork. They have to get you to sign new paperwork every year that you're there, um, so that they can count you, so that they can get paid for you, so they can get, um, noticed for helping part, your poor, the poor, whatever. Um, the first day I went into that shelter, um, it's very hard for me to tell my story at that time, especially. Um, it's hard even to this day, but it's been difficult throughout the process to try to tell people about the story and what happened to us. It's been used against me a lot. So, um, when I had stayed at my first permanent shelter, at the Hispanic shelter, um, DCFS had showed up the first time. I have a letter in 2016. Um, and both of my letters that I eventually received from them um, say on the letter that I have been charged with kidnapping and neglect, um, abuse of a minor, that sort of thing. Um, and they're identical to one another in these allegations. So they send out this first initial letter. I feel it's very threatening for somebody to send you a letter like that. And the first time they showed up, I had no idea what was going on. We had been in our shelter a couple months, and people had seen me taking care of my son and knew our story inside the shelter. They knew my story, um, so that they could understand different things, how different things affected me, um, and that sort of thing. Trouble sleeping, trouble eating, that sort of thing. Um, and they were very kind about it at the first place. The second place, Primo, used it against me entirely. Very cruel people that work there. And what's so funny is a lot of them used to live there. Um, it's a very controlled environment by the upper ladies that run it. The ladies that would be the supervisors and people in charge. Um, so the lady at the shelter um, is an ex-principal. One of the ladies I had to deal with is an ex-principal, and she knew the principal at the school my son is at now, called KIP. KIP is horrendous. If your children are in KIP, any KIP in the United States, you should really look into it. There have been a lot of people come forward now, not just myself, that noticed things were going on in that school that are very inappropriate. And I'm not the only one to say so. Check it out for yourself. KIPP. Check through the news articles. See what all states they're in and what allegations have now been brought against some of these people. And I can guarantee you the same thing happened to my son. I walked in on it one day. Nobody cared. Shortly tried to take him out of that school after that. And they used it against me when I tried to take my son out of his school and put him into another school, a new school. They actually used it against me. So those people, that charter school, I can personally say you should not trust them, and you should really look into their background before you place your child there. And I just also want to say that people should really, including myself, pay more attention to what your child tells you. Everybody has a long, hard day and frustrations and things like that, but I see it all the time. Children are trying to reach out for help, and they're ignored so much. So my son and I moved out of that shelter in April. He had been enrolled in KIP for a few months at that point. Um, when he started at KIPP, the people at KIPP that needed to know the principal, his teachers, and that sort of thing, people or the children, um, it was going to be a very scary time for him. And I was literally outside walking around the school, or first started going to school there, just so that they could call me on the phone, and I could be right there when he first started going to school. Um, so on days when I didn't have temp jobs, the different temporary type of jobs that I would do and stuff, I would be right outside of the school waiting on him. Because he had to enter school as a kindergartner, but by that time he was 6 years old, and had never been in daycare or anything like that. So I went in there giving them information, letting them know that my son, you know, he really needed to be able to catch up on social things, and I just needed them to understand that he, outside of being taken to the library and me having librarians help me read to him and things like that, because even when I was very sick, I would take him to the library. And I'm not saying all librarians are the nicest people in the world, but the library is always been a worthwhile place to me personally. And you can find librarians that do care about their job. So that's always been a very special thing between me and my son, to go to different libraries. So the point being, I've always tried to get through this every day. Anyway, school turned on me. They lied. It's a long story. My son is still there, even though I have told people like judges and lawyers, and even DCFS man, that was only on my case for like 3 weeks, and suddenly now they can't find him again. See, what DCFS does is they put a boatload of strangers in between you and your child. They literally hand off your child to anybody with a badge, not even half looking at the name tag. Just, oh, okay, here you go. Just like everybody working at McDonald's, passing the hamburger down the line. That's exactly the way your child is treated in DCFS. DCFS, to me, is the other criminal side of Planned Parenthood. And I have every right to say that. I don't give a shit. Their only reason for keeping my son, for having my son, and this is totally the only fucking reason that was stated in court, is that he apparently missed 30 days of school, which he did not miss. When you go to trial, the state, and anybody that the state brings against you, does not actually have to prove anything that they're saying. It's simply the fact that they testified and got on the stand and said some shit that it's taken as if they showed up with a million documentations. I literally pointed out to my judge that these people were perjuring themselves on the stand in the process. And the reply to me was that the testimony was not what was going to just make his decision. So in other words, it's okay that I pointed out to you that someone's committing perjury from DCFS, from the state-appointed lawyer, constantly tries to say things in court so that they will be put what's called on the record. You know, the little guy standing there typing everything that's supposedly said in court. And that's one of the ways that your court-appointed child lawyer, they have little freaky names for all their individuals, like he's like the guardian of light or some shit. The GOL. it's like being taken hostage by a really bad fraternity. And, anytime that no one will give you a clear answer on someone's name and what their job is, you should take that to mean that you're being lied to and bullshitted, and someone's probably stealing some shit from you. Your children. This is how they take everything from people. This is how people are beat up in court. I actually had someone try to come to court and back up my story, and they would not let the person in the courtroom to take the stand. They took documentation from them. They let the person write down um, their. Sorry, I'm having to decline a phone call. Um, they took a note from the person basically as to their testimony, but I think they made a paper airplane out of it and flew it across the courtroom. I'm pretty sure. Um, I was I've been given misinformation, been misguided, been lied to, um, and they consider me to have been treated kindly. The judge even pointed that out, that I've been treated kindly. Um, so his only reason for taking my child away from me was that allegedly my child missed 30 days of this at this school, which he didn't miss. They didn't produce paperwork, like I said. They just literally got up on the stand. They have to keep in mind the principal, my son's principal, who I later found out was actually tormenting my son to a degree, and some of the other children there. And he's not the only one. He's not the only staff member that does that. Um, when I started to point this out at the school, that's also when I started having a lot of problems with the school. But he is best friends with this woman at the shelter who initially started all these problems for me. The thing with the shelter was, the lady um, wanted me to sign new paperwork. She came by my house one day um, because I knew nothing about Chicago, so she was going to help me find like a security system for my home and the electric company and all this little bullshit. Um, as just being friendly. That's part of her job, right? The bitch was stalking me. She still stalks me. She still sends me text messages and emails, and no one will make her stop. Um, the day I had to go to court to trial about my son, she actually sent me a text message. And she tries to make it seem like she's forwarding out a bunch of text messages at once, right? And so the text message actually said, the day I was going to go to trial, or went to trial, it actually said, I hope you and your family are doing well. It's okay, bitch. I could say a lot of things right now. I won't say. But everything is accounted for in life. Let's just say that. So she kept harassing me to sign new paperwork. And I kept telling her, look, I'm not signing any more paperwork with you guys. I don't live there anymore, and I kind of don't want you just showing up at my place anytime you feel like it. We're not actually friends, okay? I didn't give you the invite to just show up at any time. I asked you specific questions, with where the electric company was and this and that, and I was done with it, you know. Um, she suddenly went berserk, um, and we got into a few arguments because she lied to me a few times about a few things. Um, right after I had moved out, and because when I had moved in there, it had been um, the year before, and it had been 2016, so they had my signature from then, but they needed my new signature for 2017 so that they could count me for a whole nother year, and I was no longer living there. Um, she started stalking me around my house, um, trying to get me to sign new paperwork. She would pop up, and I just thought it was really weird, and I was like, um, just I had a lot of things on my mind, and I was trying to recover from what had happened to us, and I was trying to start a new life for my son. Um, I just wanted to make sure he had a good home and was happy where he went to school. And um, I ended up with the type of situation where it was going to allow us to have 5 years where um, we could have a home, and during that process, I was supposed to be able to save money so that at the end of the 5 years, um, they could help us buy a house. The 5 years was to help us reestablish our life and to be able to save money. We lost everything, and I lost everything physically as well. My ability to do everything. Um, so they knew, with the problems I was having, that I just needed some time to really heal and to be able to get better. So that was the whole point of us being able to do this. Um, we lived in our home less than a year before they took him. It was right at our year anniversary when they took my son. So he got a few months in his home, and that was it. And we were happy for a few months. I worked jobs where I was actually able to take him with me. Um, and he really loved it because he was able to sit there and do his own thing while I did my job. Um, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Letting your child see you work, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm just really kind of tired right now. So they got harassed us to sign new paperwork. She came up to me at one point, um, and it was weird. She knew I'd been at that point trying to get my medical documents, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how much it would cost. Um, I didn't understand the difference between Wi-Fi and data for the longest time. Okay, like I really don't understand a lot of things. Like I just learned what really a hashtag is. I didn't understand what the hell that was for a while. Um, so just you can get me with simple things just because it's a new experience for me, and I don't totally understand it because I wasn't a part of it when it happened. I guess I was out of society for a while. Um, and I still am trying to learn how to interact with people because every time I get to a certain point where it feels good, I feel like I can go to work and I feel like I can trust the teacher to leave my child there and that sort of thing. The rug is pulled out really quickly, um, all the time. So the lady from the shelter um, had told me that I had $50 left over that I had never used from when I was staying there, and that everybody that stayed at the shelter had like a $50 fund for whatever they needed to use it for, diapers or paperwork or that sort of thing. And I had actually, I think, got one of my birth certificates, um, but she was like, it still wasn't all the money or something like that. So anyway, the apparently what she had told me one day after I kind of like didn't want to talk to her anymore, but was still willing to, just out of politeness. Um, she made it known to me one day that that they could help me get my medical documents, um, because I hadn't apparently used all the money in my little fund from when I had stayed at the shelter. Yes, I was very stupid. No, I didn't see this one coming. And I don't like to say the word stupid, but the problem is I'm not just sitting here all day long trying to think about how to hurt people, or um, or that sort of thing. I really just try to make it one day to the next, um, doing simple things, trying to find a job, cook dinner, wash clothes. um, and my body isn't able to digest food the way it once was, and I can only eat certain things and certain times, and it really affects your ability to create energy to be able to go out there and to physically work and things like that, and to be constantly attacked by people when you're trying to keep a good train of thought and a positive attitude, and when you're constantly being attacked by people. It's crazy. So she tricked me very easily. She caught me in a moment of distress where I was trying to once again figure out, how I could get my medical paperwork, and we were just having a general conversation. So the bitch promised me that she could help me get this medical paperwork that I'd wanted, um, from when I was in the coma and those things that happened to me. I still, at that time, even last year, did not have the full understanding that I do today about a lot of shit. As this process is happening to me, people are tricking me, people are lying to me. They're misleading us, me and my son, in different directions. And we had no friends or family to guide us. So this dumb bitch tells me she can help me get medical paperwork that's very important to me because I want to get better faster so that me and my child can get on with our own fucking life. And these people know how to intimidate you. They know how to pick fights with you. They're whores. That's what I call these people. Whores. It has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. It's a mentality. Um, and she used her whore mentality on me. She saw I was weak. She took advantage of me. She saw I didn't truly understand things, paperwork, how to find out how much money things cost, in a truthful way, because I do get lied to a lot by professional people, doctors, lawyers, people at the courthouse, different people. Some people tell me the truth. Some people lie to me. That's why I ask a lot of different people the same question. Um, so, um, last year, um, and I don't mean last year like before Christmas, I mean like this has been going on a year now, over a year now. And she was tormenting me before DCFS ever became involved. So, um, out of the few years that I've been in Chicago, this woman has been harassing the shit out of me most of the time. Um, she lied to me one day. She told me that she actually had gotten my medical documentation, and she called me on the phone, um, and said that she had my medical paperwork out of the blue. She just called me up one day and said, yeah, it had been like a few weeks since I had talked to her about this, getting the paperwork and everything. And um, she lied to me a lot. So I didn't understand electronic signatures and things like that. And it was something to do with, I think she had actually got me to sign a piece of paper. saying on something about getting them released, the paperwork itself released or something like that. But then I think she lost that piece of paper. And this is why she was calling me back. Was because she actually lost my signature to actually get the medical paperwork, which she actually had no right to get anyway. She's not a doctor. She's a, I'll think of what her actual official title is in a minute, but she's not a fucking doctor at all, okay? She works at a damn shelter. That's the problem I have with so many of these people now that are running around with these jobs and presenting themselves as if they, are legitimate in any sort of way. A doctor, a lawyer. There are people out there that are a part of the profession in some way, but aren't as high up in the profession as they claim to be, I guess, is the way to say it. She had tried to convince me that she had my medical documentation, but and I asked her, I said, I need you to bring it to my house for me. Or can I come get on the bus and come to where you're at and come get it from you? So, at first her response to me, and you got to understand, before I agreed to let her help me get my medical documentation, which she never actually did, I told her, I said, I don't want anybody to open it before I do. I don't want anybody looking through these, this paperwork. My thing was I had wanted to get the paperwork, and I wanted to find a doctor that I felt comfortable with to go and talk to about it. Not a mental doctor, a physical fucking doctor. I was in a coma. I lost a baby. There was an abortion. There was sterilization. There are questions that are not answered to this day about my own body, physical body. They'll use anything to try to say you're crazy and put you away. You could have a fucking broke fingernail, and they'll swear to God you're nuts and want to tie you down to a bed for the rest of your fucking life and fill you full of their dope. And do all kinds of exciting shit to your body against your will. So she tricked me, and then she purposely got into an argument with me about it to upset me. She knew I was, I didn't want to. Time to me is very short, and I don't like to waste people's time. And I don't want you to waste my time with bullshit. So, she really got me good. She really tricked me that day. She waited until I was upset about something else that was going on. And she called me up and she said this to me. At first she was like, oh yeah, I'll bring it to you. And then I waited for her to come, and then I called her back. And then she was like, well, I'm not going to bring it to you. Or I'll come by your house, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to give you your own paperwork until this is what she pops up with, until I, as a therapist, go through this paperwork thoroughly, and then I can give you my professional opinion. I was like, that's not what we agreed to, and what the fuck are you talking about? You have property of mine that does not belong to you, that you shouldn't even open. This is my shit. Okay? She picked such a big fight with me that day, and I can prove this, because we were arguing through text messages a lot. And then briefly talking on the phone with one another, but mostly text messages. She actually text messaged me that it's okay, because she had gotten me so upset that day that I was to a point where I just didn't want to talk to anybody anymore that day. And she kept texting to me and trying to call me back, and I kept trying to let her know, leave me alone. I just want to go get my kid from school and think about this bullshit that you've said to me. I was very angry because she had lied to me and told me that she had something that was very important to me, my medical documentation, which I thought could answer a lot of questions for me. And she all of a sudden wasn't going to give it to me. That really pissed me off. Like, this is just a shelter bitch. This is just a bitch that works at a shelter. I don't care what she says. I don't care how many computer printouts of degrees that she puts on her wall, okay? This woman is a piece of trash. And so are most of the women that she works with at Primo Shelter. And her initials are CB, in case you're having to deal with her currently. And fuck it, I don't even care. Her name's Carmelita Bradley, the one that initially started all these problems for me. And she has a backup crew that also works with her at her shelter. That run around like strange little midgets trying to do evil. So sad. I could say a lot. I won't say it right now. So anyway, that's initially what she had done, and then she sent me this text message saying that to calm down, basically, that she'll take me to the emergency room. No cops involved. The fuck does that mean, bitch? No cops involved. What the fuck does that mean? Like, it took me a while to realize. It took me a while to like really realize what had happened, and what she was really up to. Um, she was wanting to take me to the emergency room with no witnesses, so that once she got into the emergency room, she was then going to sign paperwork as if she was my caregiver. She had started telling people this. She had started telling people I was mentally unstable and that she was basically my caregiver. She followed me to my job, my different little temp jobs. I would go to work. I would go to return to work for people, um, doing various menial type of jobs. And, all of a sudden these people would be angry with me, very suspicious of me, very cruel to me. And and then they would actually corner me in a conversation and tell me things like, a social worker approached me the other day. A social worker approached you? Yeah, they approached me about you and warned me about you. And I was like, what do you mean this person approached you and warned you about me? Um, she called my landlord. She tried to gain access to my apartment illegally through my landlord. My landlord wasn't having it. He's not a dummy. He can see right through a straight whore. Thank God. He is a man with intelligence, enough not to let a woman lie to him. And such a flimsy fucking lie, too. I mean, this bitch must think men are just completely dumb. And he told her hell no. That pissed her off. It pissed her off because she had gone around town, like I said, to my different employers and stuff, and told them these crazy stories about me, how I had escaped from a mental hospital in Georgia, and ran away to Chicago with my child. And they were very concerned about me. She went to town on the fucking lies that she told people about me. She lied to police officers about me. She texted me the day I was supposed to go to trial. She was supposed to be called to court as a witness, and then at the last moment they decided not to call her as a witness because they realized that the bitch would make them look like a fool. And I'm sure for several other reasons they didn't want to call her. But the whole time she was texting me, and it was made very clear to me how she was going to come to court and constantly threatening me, constantly lying about me. Called the food stamps office, told them I was committing fraud. I lost my food stamps way before anybody else did. I occasionally get food stamps when they fucking feel like it. And then I always have to go back down there, refill out paperwork, and they don't recredit you for time missed. If they do, congratulations, because they don't me. So I'm just fucking hungry sometimes. Because this bitch lied. And she's got friends that help her do it. And this is how, unfortunately, I don't even know how to say this, but it's a good way that people take down one another. Let's just say that, and especially when you're the same sex. I really feel attacked by this woman and her little group of bitches. And they don't just attack me; they attack other women that come to that shelter. You know, I know I'm not the only person they've done this to. Like I said, where they've done similar things to this, where you actually get out of their shelter and have a chance at making it, and they will send people your way to fuck with you. And why, you ask the question? Well, they are a homeless shelter for women. I mean, what better way to make sure that you're always going to stay in business than to create your own customers? You bring women in there, you let them receive help from other different forms of the state during their time of need, and then the minute they move out of your shelter and you can no longer directly make money off of them, you then start contacting these other state agencies and have things like their food stamps, their vouchers affected, their children affected. That's very fucking cruel. And I have a lot to say to you bitches that I won't say right here and now. But you know how I feel about you. I don't make it a secret. Um, so, essentially, the bitch at the shelter used the bitch ass principal at my son's school um, to side with her. And the school has its own fucking issues as well. That particular charter school. Yes, it does. I don't give a shit what you say. It does. Look into it. Um, and then she called her little bitch ass friend DCFS. The bitch from the shelter, Carmelita Bradley, showed up at my door, was the one beating on my door that day. After I told this woman to leave me alone, she had tried to trick me to take me to the hospital. No cops involved. Why don't you want to call the cops, bitch? They don't ever really want to involve regular street police officers. Every government agency has its own police force, in case you guys don't know that. Um, the police department itself is many divisions and purposes and things like that. There's far more to the cops than just the ones that patrolling the streets and things like that. Okay, some people will know this as well. DCPD, I think is what it's called. It's DCFS police force. It's detectives. They don't dress in police uniforms. They are detectives. They dress in suits. That sort of thing. It's a really long story, sorry. Um, so I decided to take my son out of that school even before DCFS showed up. There were things that happened there, which I can get into as well. There were times where he was mistreated by some of the staff. And I actually walked in on it. Grown-ups in a room by themselves with my child. No one else in that room. They're trying to put what's a restraint on my child because apparently he had said a word that upset somebody. A restraint is a straitjacket. It is literally a straitjacket. The day I walked in on one day, and this big bitch was in there by herself with my child, and had him like that, with her arms wrapped around him, struggling with him to get this thing on him. And I walked in, and at first I thought it was like a fucking jacket. I was like, why is she putting the jacket on him backwards? And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, and she looked at me, and she was like, yeah, I'm having to restrain him. And the things that they would accuse my child of, I would kind of play along at first, like, oh yeah, really, you did that, huh? And I would say this shit to other people there, that would be a part of these little meetings that I would have with these people, the administrators, the staff, or whatever. And, nobody ever wanted to involve other adults. That's another thing about KIPP, KIP, charter schools, is if you notice, they'll always want to accuse your child of something, but they'll never let you know who the other adult is. They do not want the parents interacting in that way. And I don't give a shit what bullshit reason they say that's for. That's not right. And a lot of times now people will make up laws or policies so that we don't interact with each other and so that they are in total control. They don't want the parents to really interact with each other unless you're up there spending money at one of the little festivals. But they don't allow you to ever speak to another adult if your child is being accused of something or if something's been done to your child. They will let you know that they're taking care of it. And no more information will be given to you than very vague information, which makes it very easy for them to lie about children and adults. I'm getting tired at this point, and I hope this first video goes way better than it feels like it's going. So I tried to take him out of that school to put him in another school where he actually seemed like he would be happy. He was very excited about the new school. The new school was actually being built the first year he was at that school, and we were waiting for it to be completed. The only thing I liked about Kip is that I had actually liked his counselor who was doing art therapy with him, and his initial kindergarten teacher who actually came to court and turned on me and lied. Now I get it, and you should too. Every state-funded anything, home daycare, school, charter school, doctor's office, and the list goes on. No one cares about you and your child, really, in these type of situations. These people are paid. They have agreed to take this job. They understand what it means to work there. And they will lie to you all fucking day long. His kindergarten teacher came to my house. We spent time together. This woman knew me to a certain degree. I'm not saying we're best friends, but she knew me well enough to come to my home and feel safe here by herself. So did his counselor, who came to my home over the summertime between kindergarten and first grade. I interacted with these people in thinking that it was in the best interest of my son. I trust these people that, they would understand our situation in the way that they had told me that they would. They knew from day one that he might have difficulty getting there sometimes on time. And let me tell you something. He got there on time plenty of times to school, which is something else they do, and they lied about in court at KIP. They actually count tardies, 3 tardies, so many like that, equals out to 1 absence. They denied this in court and said that that's totally untrue. If there's anybody else out there that has a child that has gone to that charter school, that has heard about such a policy, as if your child is late like 3 times, it counts as 1 absence, will you please leave a comment to me? I'm not allowed to really talk to anybody out at school anymore. They've pretty much let everybody believe I'm a monster, and they had to save my child from me. They forced my child to still go to school there, even though I told the judge that he had been assaulted at that school, needed to be removed from that school. His foster mother, who's had him from day one, who is a foster mother, she's a paid person of the state. Um, please believe that. Um, they make so much money off of us. It's ridiculous, especially my child being in foster care. Um, she gets paid for being his foster parent. She gets food stamps. She gets food stamps for him. She's a working woman. Okay? So this whole foster situation is another profession for her. Plus, what else I think about her right now. And I have every right to think that way. They think horrible things about me without any proof at all. And she's been in court before, and they don't ever try to tell me that it's her. They try to deny that it's her. The foster parent will probably be sitting on the same side of the court as the child-appointed lawyer, or guardian of light, or whatever bullshit name they give that person. The child-appointed lawyer is in charge of the DCFS bitches. He gives them commands. He tells them things like, "You got to make this case stronger, so that I can win the case." He's trying to win the case so that the state can win your child, so that they can do whatever they want at that point. Adopt him out. There's a lot of money in that. And he works as an adoption agent. So the fact that he's supposed to be a representative in court of my son and my son's wishes is a fucking joke. There is no one there to speak for your child. There is no one there. Your child is simply taken hostage. And they blame you for that. The parent. You know. That is if you can make it out of the hospital without having the baby aborted now. And these people really believe that they own us. And you can argue that or not. I really, I've heard all kinds of arguments for that. I understand the concept of admiralty law as well. And, so you have one side that interprets our birth certificates as slave certificates and have sold them off to other countries. I've heard people talk about that. How you should separate yourself now from United States of America Incorporated and somehow make yourself independent and only a member of the United States of America. I'm trying to figure all that out right now. It's a lot of legality to it. Basically, DCFS court is civil court, even though they try to pass criminal charges against you and find ways to charge you in criminal ways. All day long, they'll tell you it's not a criminal court. It's a civil court, basically. Well, then we're arguing about property and right to it, essentially. Which is why they have to give you those bus passes so that you can come visit your child, whether you're doing services or not. I've never done services. I will never do services. I've never signed paperwork, and they've tried to trick me in all kinds of ways. They've tried to slide paperwork at me. "Oh, I need you to sign this real quick." "No, buddy, I need to read this real quick." They've tried to make phone calls to me to have me participate in services over the phone is another trick. I hang up the phone. I don't participate. I'm very nice. I'm not rude, but I stand my ground, and I let you know that I know I have rights, and what's been done to me is wrong. And, my child has been affected in very real ways. It truly frightens me. This is why another reason I haven't spoke out yet. But fuck it at this point, because I fear if, they kill us off and nobody ever hears our story, then that's pointless. We die in vain. At least now, if something happens to one of us, somebody will have heard the story, hopefully. So, Like I said, they took my son. I didn't see him. I did not give my son to anybody. They tried to beat in my door several times after they initially came out. Like I said, Carmelie Brady showed up with a woman named Alicia, who was an older black woman, not the younger black woman that took the stand and claimed to be Alicia. And you know what? The younger woman might actually be Alicia, and the old bitch that showed up at the door that day might have just been using her name badge, which is why she didn't. She flashed it and put it back in her pocket. She wouldn't let me actually see her badge. Okay? When I stepped outside my door that day, I stepped outside my door because I thought it was Carmelita out there on my porch, and I told this heifer, "Don't come back to my house. I'll consider it trespassing. Leave us alone. We don't want your help anymore. Leave us alone, bitch," is what I told her to her face one day. And she looked me in my eye and told me, because I called her a bitch, she was going to get me. She's going to have my son taken away from me. She said, "I'm going to get you and have your son taken away from you." And she showed up 2 weeks later with this woman, a DCFS worker. After I cussed her out, told her to get off my porch, I talked to the DCFS woman. She flashed this badge in front of my face, put it away pretty quickly. I said, "Why are you here with this woman from this shelter?" Because the first words out of this woman's mouth was, "Well, your child's been acting up at school." I said, "So why are you here with this bitch from the shelter? Why aren't you here with somebody from the school?" She immediately knew I already knew what was going on. Y'all are buddies, and this is how she's going to take my child from me, which she already threatened to do. And she's a shelter worker bitch with a small degree in some bullshit. And she knows how to lie, and I'm pretty sure she's pretty good with Photoshop. She lies to everybody. And when other people who lie meet her, it's like they converge into the fucking evil Wonder Twins or something. So, I didn't give up my child. I don't give my child to strangers. And if it's really an issue that concerns the courts will send you a letter to come to court about your issue. And then if you don't show up to court, they'll come get your ass, right? That's how that goes, right? Okay, so I'm not going to let anybody come to my door, come in my home, or take any fucking thing from me just because they say so. So this went on for a few weeks. They tried to go to court without me at first and say that they had come by my house to inform me that there was going to be she didn't say shit about court that day. She was trying to get my child away from me. And I told both those bitches to get off my porch. I will wait for my letter to come in the mail to go to court. The way it's officially supposed to. I'm not going to let some raggedy bitch hand me a piece of paper. And no, it's not happening. Let's see some real shit. Let's see some court stamps. Let's see some shit like that, okay? Don't let DCFS punk you. And if they have punk you, don't feel bad. Just become smarter. From this point on, whatever you feel like you've lost in the game, regain yourself and start thinking a new strategy. These are your fucking kids. Fuck these bitches. They're kidnappers. That's all that DCFS is. I don't give a fuck what argument you want to have for that one time they might have gave somebody back their kid. Oh, what, in a very tiny, small town where everybody knows each other? Seriously? They're kidnappers. That's all they are. Okay? This has been going on. This is not just because they took my child. They killed my senator, too, back in 2007 because she was trying to reveal what DCFS was doing. You think the kids in cages in the Walmarts are anything fucking new? They've had kids in cages. Anyway, they killed my senator back in 2007 from the state of Georgia. If you want to look into that, you can find out who I'm talking about. Her name's Nancy. Um, so there have been plenty of good people who have tried to come forward for a long time. This is their 50th year anniversary. They're very fucking proud of that at DCFS. There's damn posters everywhere. It's our 50th anniversary. Great. Your propaganda machine is 50 years old. Congratulations. Um, when the people who benefit from the numbers make up the numbers, that's real simple to figure out. That's a scam. That's a lie. There's something not legit going on there. DCFS makes up all these abuse numbers, by the way. They literally convince the public that people, you know, in poverty, or especially in poverty, like somehow we're just not smart enough to love our children. We don't, we don't work hard. We don't go to work. We didn't work for 20 something years before we ever gave birth to a child. No. And you know what? I really don't give a fuck if you started having babies day one. I think in life we're supposed to be happy about life. Not go, oh, fuck, what are we going to do with this one? I'm trying to finish the story. And I want to make more videos. I actually want a place for people, because I've seen so many people lose their children. Every Friday I have to go visit my child at a DCFS office. They add to your torment, and they get off on showing you that they can bully other people in front of you and your child while you and your child are trying to have a visit with one another. They literally are tearing other families apart right around you. And telling you that their number one goal is to return the child back to the family. Yet, and I have taken pictures of this, so I can prove what I'm saying, they commission artwork that hangs in their DCFS waiting rooms that says adoption is special. And it literally shows the child being taken from one person, one female, and given to another female. Adoption is special at DCFS because it is their business and they promote it everywhere. And they do it right in your face while they're standing there lying to you in front of the fucking artwork that their whole goal is to make sure that you and your family are reunited. They torment you and then try to force you into doing services because they want to make sure that you're mentally fit enough to have your child returned to you, but yet they're the ones that tormented you. They have done things to my child physically, mentally. They have taken him out of state. They took him to California. They've had shots put in his body that he did not need. And when I asked for paperwork, all I got were a couple of pieces of paper, and it looks like somebody used a really bad copy machine. You cannot, none of it's legible. And they had the nerve to put it in a sealed envelope and give it to me and walk away. And then when I opened it and realized that it was just 2 or 3 pieces of paper that was unlegible, literally unlegible, they told me that was the medical documentation I had requested. And essentially that it was none of my business what they did to my son. They have the right to do it. And again, they're only keeping my son because he allegedly missed 30 days of school. Let me tell you something about the state of Illinois, because I looked into it. I've even got in touch with the Board of Education. It even says that on the paperwork that you can print out from the Board of Education, It's a small registration form. On the fucking form itself, from the Board of Education in the state of fucking Illinois, it says, um, registration is not mandatory. Homeschool is something that is very legal in the state of Illinois. I found out because they have so many different apparent religions here that homeschooling was it, it was it far outweighed public school at one point before the government actually started to, you know, own everybody just outright to your face. Oh, my leg hurts. I had let the judge know that I had problems at that school. His foster mom had made a comment that she didn't like that school too much at one point. And then, of course, she didn't say much else. She didn't say that in court. She said that to one of the caseworkers who said it one day. So they knew initially that wasn't a place where he was supposed to be. It made him uncomfortable. This was made known in court. It was made known to DCFS workers after I initially took him to court. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So it was a couple weeks in between the time where they initially showed up at my door and I was waiting on a piece of paper to come in the mail to go to court. Me and my son hid out during that time because they were constantly we were being followed around. People were constantly beating on our doors, trying to kick in our doors. What was funny to me was that the day that Carmelita Bradley came out with the person from DCFS, who eventually lied about who they were anyway, these two nut jobs, I was inside trying to get ready for work. And after I initially answered the door, I was done. I had to go to work. I had to come back and finish getting ready to go to work. Well, and I want to say thank you to whoever this was, because it really means a lot to me to this day, that a police officer actually said this about me. And I don't know who it was because I couldn't see on the other side of the door. I just simply heard the conversation. They apparently went and got a police officer to come back and kick my door in. Well, the police officer knows already that, they didn't have a warrant, and unless they hear a crime, I think, in action, that's like the only time they can kick down your door without a warrant, is if they really believe that there's a crime in process inside your house. Like you're in there screaming for help, he's killing me, that sort of thing, right? So, I'm trying to get dressed to leave. I'm going to go outside my other door. I'm not dealing with these bitches no more. I'm getting literally ready to leave. And I hear beep, beep, beep on my door, so I come out of the bathroom. And I just stood there and I heard her voice. I heard Carmelita's voice. And she was telling the police officer, she was trying to convince him to kick in my door. She told the man, well, he said something to her, like, what's going on here or something. And I could not hear all of what he said at first. But her response, when I came out of the bathroom, was basically to his question was that, according to my ex-boyfriend, I was a whore on cocaine. And whoever the police officer was, I heard him laugh. And he laughed at her. And he said, ma'am, are you talking about this lady? Because you have to understand, these are the same neighbors and police officers that have been seeing me, well, at that point for a year or more, living in this neighborhood, interacting with my child, taking him to school, buying him ice cream on the ice cream truck, playing with him at the park. I mean, these people around here might not know exactly my name and my story, but your neighbors interact with you, just walking down the street, at the corner store, seeing you with your child, seeing you with their pets, seeing you with your friends. People get impressions of you and interacting with you. You know, people walk up to me. Um, if I have an extra quarter, I give it to them. Even if I just made that quarter panhandling. You know, if I got what I needed, then I have no problem helping somebody else. Um, so my neighbors and uh, you know, the neighboring people, the fire department. I used to take my son for a walk to the fire department, which was right next to the library, up the street. Um, all kinds of people saw us out and about. The ice cream men, you know, the guys that ride around in the ice cream trucks. We had 2 or 3 different ice cream trucks where um, the ice cream people knew us. Um, so it really kind of meant a lot to me that day that somebody actually stood up to this lying bitch and let her know you're not going to lie about this woman like that. And it was very simple. That's all he said was, ma'am, are you talking about this lady? And he kind of laughed. And I guess, you know, shook it off or whatever, because I didn't hear him say anything else, and I just heard them all walk back down the stairs, and then I went to work. But it's just things like that that mean a lot to me. When strangers, um, and you know, I'm sure I've seen this person. I just don't know who they are. I don't know everybody by name. Um, just because I have general respect for people. Um, it meant a lot to me that he said that to her. So they kind of got tired of trying to get the regular police officers in the neighborhood to kick in my door, and so then they sent out the DCPD, which is a whole nother monster. Um, I think these bitches take too many hormones or something, like the wrong type of hormone, like, I don't know. Like maybe they're trying to do some bodybuilding on the side or something, but these 4 monstrous bitches came in through a stairway one day. My neighbors can tell you this, who were standing outside when it happened, right before I was supposed to go to court. Um, and keep in mind, that's what I was waiting for me and my son to be able to actually go before a judge. Um, Another reason that was so important to me was because I realized that she was trying to get DCFS, the woman from the shelter, was trying to use her DCFS buddy to claim my child in the state of Illinois so that they could then send him back to the state of Georgia, where he would have not made it as long as he has in the state of Illinois. These same bitches at this shelter knew that this man that I had left behind had tried to kill me and my son. When DCFS, when we had to go to court and I had to turn my son over to the judge, um, they had called the man. They brought him to Chicago. They used the excuse because they knew he was on the birth certificate, even though I made it very plain to everyone from day one. He's just on the birth certificate. He is not the biological father. Now, he's black. Just to let you know, my son's half Asian. And yes, he was aware of this from day one. I don't give a fuck what he says. He was aware of it. But again, you know, it is what it is. He understood the reason I wanted him to sign the birth certificate was because at that time, essentially, I was alone. I was making it. I had my own job. I paid my own bills. But what I mean alone was I didn't have a lot of family in case something happened to me. And I wanted somebody to be able to come forward, legally come forward, and be on my son's birth certificate in case I died. There was going to be money left for you. There was going to be a way for you to take care of him. You were going to be compensated for doing this if it did happen. Um, so he agreed to it. And he signed my son's birth certificate. And then, like I said, like 2.5 years later, we were at a point where I was pregnant. We were supposedly getting married, and yada, 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 a bunch of bullshit. The bitches at the shelter knew, and I told them that, this is not my son's biological father. They purposely used that as a reason to bring him to Chicago. Now, I ran from this man, hoping that it would give us time and space to be safely away from him in every aspect. And they knew all this, and then they chose that as their angle because they knew I was in a situation where he was technically still in my son's birth certificate, and I hadn't been able to find a lawyer yet to deal with the situation of how to have his name changed and how to have this man taken off my son's birth certificate. They knew that, and they used it against me. And they knew that he was an evil son of a bitch, who would probably be more than happy to participate in any little sideshow they put together. So that's the ammunition that they used against me. The day that I went to court, February 13th, 2018, they took my son the day before Valentine's Day. I know some people don't celebrate Valentine's Day, but anyway, everything's just unique to me and my son. We don't celebrate it for any other reason that other people do, okay? He went into the donut shop. They were heart-shaped donuts. I told him there's a day called Valentine's Day. He was very excited. Then we started celebrating it to celebrate love. Okay. So they broke my heart the day before the day of love. Anyway, fuck them. So in court that day, we show up. Sitting in the waiting room is my ex, who I had ran away from, who had tried to kill me, we were very frightened of. I mean, the shelter that we stayed at understood that when we moved into our apartment, I had tried to pick a place that was close to a police station, was close to some place that where people knew us, the shelter, was close to my son's school. I was trying to create a community in which my son could be recognized in case this person showed back up or any of his friends showed back up for some fucking reason, some way found us. I was just concerned about us. And I was concerned about my child more than myself. They knew all of that. They chose to bring him to Chicago. Now, if you had a question as to whether or not somebody was the paternal biological parent that's on the birth certificate, you can do that without them having to physically be there. He did not have to come all the way to Chicago for the DNA test. No, the fuck he didn't. That was unnecessary. The reason they brought him there, the reason they placed him in the waiting room, and then let me go into the waiting room with my child alone, not knowing he was in there, was to shock me. That was the purpose of it. So that I would literally have a breakdown and fall apart in front of a judge, and the judge never having seen me before, not having known any part of the story, other than I was accused of kidnapping and neglecting my child, and now this supposed other parent showed up, the one that I kidnapped him from, looking for his kid. Let me tell you something, even the judge, day one, could look at the black man and tell that the Asian kid didn't belong to him. Common sense. He even made a statement. The judge did himself about it. So, he was clearly you see what you see. And in this situation, the truth was very easy to see, okay? So that was the whole reason of bringing him here. And they told him where I lived. They didn't mention it in court, but they told him after court. And me the whole time, you know, hey, this dude tried to kill us. Hey, this dude tried to kill us. Hey, this dude tried to kill us. Didn't matter. It was his right, right? It's whoever they want to use against one another. And then, of course, as soon as we wait a few months for you know, the results and all this kind of crap, which proves what I was saying the whole time. He was not his biological father. He has no real right to him as a parent in any sort of way. They want to, you know, they want to throw it out. The fact they tried to bring him there to use him against me as the initial excuse to bring me into court. Okay. Like I said, they took him that day. I didn't see him for 3 weeks. He was forced to spend time with this man that tried to kill him. He was forced to interact with him again after we had ran away from him. He was taken from his mother. Didn't really understand why. Was forced back into the school I had just took him out of, where he was being picked on by adults. And he still is forced to go to that school to this day. To this day. No one has ever taken any account of anything that I've stated in court about the way that we've been mistreated and tortured by other people. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Anytime I make them aware of the fact that he's had things put in his body. He's been forced to go to doctors. And they say that it was for immunizations. No, he had just got all his fucking shots to go to school. He just started school. There was nothing to catch up on. Whatever they did to him, it was nothing to do with his immunizations. And they didn't even want to tell me about it at first. The reason I found out was because he came to his visit that day and his arm was hurting him so badly. And he kept just, he wouldn't leave it alone. And finally I asked him, I said, honey, what's wrong? And he pulled up his shirt and I could see a little pinprick in his fucking body. That's how big the needle was for whatever it was they did to him. And then I asked about it. And they initially didn't want to tell me anything. I had literally had to get my lawyer to force them to give me that bogus-ass paperwork, which turned out to be nothing but a bunch of smudge marks on 3 pieces of paper. They, of course, you know, constantly try to tell your child, as they've constantly tried to tell my child, that, you know, when I can't see him, whether it's their fault or mine, that it's always my fault. You know, they really try to make your child believe that you're never coming back for them, giving them up, that you don't care, that you know, it's real sad what happened to your mom, but we're here to help you type of shit. He was spanked for not being able to say the word "the." He has hearing problems, assholes. I've told them that from day one too. There's no point in trying to do anything with it other than what I know to do with it, because I have the same type of problems with my ears. And oddly enough, I have the same type of speech. Doesn't make you stupid. Doesn't mean that you have a learning disability. Because what they've done is they took him and shot him up out of 1st grade to 3rd grade, where he technically, they say, should be. Even told me they wouldn't do that. They told me that they would let him progress through school the way that he needed to. That's a fucking lie. They're going to automatically always try to push your child forward so that they can get money for them taking those tests, that they take throughout the year. And then they're also going to continuously try to tell you that at some point your child has a learning disability so that they can also make money off of that. And you're pushing them forward 2 grades. He accidentally told me because he was so upset when they first took him and it happened. And I immediately said something about it. That day, he came into the room. This was about 4 months after they took him, and he'd only been able to see me a couple of times. Literally, they kept him from me for weeks at a time. They have kept him from me. He got real upset that day because I'm not a big spanker. I don't really get into all that, okay? I might yell at you, and you wish I'd slapped you. But honest to God, I'm just not really into that. It doesn't mean I feel I'm above it. It doesn't mean it won't happen. Okay? I have regrettably spanked my child before, one time. It was because he was very small, and I was really afraid of him running out into traffic. And I just hit him in the ass a couple of times just so he could understand, look, there's pain involved if you get hit by a car, buddy. And Mama don't want you to get hit by a car. Stay out the fucking road. And honest to God, that's the only time I've ever spanked my child. And I regret it to this day. But if I hadn't have done it, he might be dead right now because he thought he was a superhero one time when he was very young. They spanked him because, he said the instead of the. Fuck you. Let me tell all you so-called intelligent motherfuckers something. Life is very precious, very special. And the whole point of being intelligent is to be able to interact in life with one another, with other forms of life, the water, the air, right? That's intelligence, right? So, when it comes to this pronunciation of word shit, that's great. If you're trying to win an award or something special like that, is learning how to read. And your whole thing is to force them to pronounce the word a certain way. You can clearly see that they're having trouble pronouncing it. Fuck you. Then who's the big asshole? It's the whole point of communication is to be able to understand what a person says. That's it. All this other fancy shit is great. I love English class, sure. But you actually spanked my child because he was trying to read to you and couldn't pronounce a word the way that you thought it needed to be pronounced. And by the way, the and the are both the way you can pronounce that word. Fuck you. To whoever spanked my child and beat his ass for that, he didn't get a chance to tell me who it was. He got so upset that day he started busting out into tears the moment that our visit started. He was able to get enough out and at this point the DCFS worker, there's one that's the driver, and they're all DCFS workers, whether it's the driver, the security guard, the water boy, they're all DCFS workers. They will all come to court and report on your ass. They are all court reporters. Even the trash man. Yes, they will drag the janitor up in there into court if they think they can make you look bad. Okay? There is no anybody you can talk to at DCFS and think that they're not going to be against you. That is not fucking paranoia. They say it themselves. They're court appointed reporters. It's part of their job to go to court if they're called to do so and say whatever the fuck they're told to say. That goes for shelter workers. Anybody with a state government job is technically a court reporter. Not a court reporter, a court, where you can be called into court to testify against somebody. It's part of your job. Postal workers, anybody that has a state job. Um, I get frustrated. I say the wrong word sometimes, but it is about communication. So if you can understand what I'm trying to communicate, that's the whole point. I'm a little upset when I think about it. Them whooping my son's ass because he couldn't pronounce a word really pisses me off. And it's actually the same exact fucking word that I couldn't pronounce at his age either. And throughout my life, I've had words that I literally could not pronounce for a period of time. I couldn't hear certain sounds in the word itself, and I would I, I would mispronounce the word. But hey, genius, you understood what I said, right? And you're the educated one. Okay. Uh, so he was so upset, he was crying, and I was trying to get him to tell me what exactly had happened, who had done this to him. Do you know that they came in and snatched my child out of the room while he was in the middle of crying to me about somebody whipping? That was all that he could get out. Mama, they whipped my ass. I said, what are you talking about? They whipped your ass. And he was like, I couldn't say the. I couldn't say the. I said the, and they wouldn't stop. And I was shocked. I said, baby, who are you talking about? One of the teachers at school? Who are you talking about? And before he could actually answer my question, they literally snatched him out of the fucking room, um, drug him out of the DCFS office, crying. I'm standing there arguing, hey, what? He's trying to tell me something. Somebody's hurting him. One of the caseworkers comes in the room, oh, you just need really to calm down. What did you do to upset him, Miss Smith, is exactly what this motherfucker said to me. What did I do to upset him? I didn't do shit. I said hello. I said, how you been doing, baby? And he lost his mind and started crying up and telling me about how he got jumped by apparently an adult. During reading. Reading. I didn't see my baby again after that for 3 weeks. Again. They'll keep him 3 or 4 weeks at a time. Won't let me see him. Supposed to be able to see him 1 day a week for 2 hours. Supposed to be able to talk to my baby on the phone. Have never been able to have a phone conversation with my child since they took him. The foster mother won't allow it. The foster mother will not allow my child to bring home anything that I give him. When they first took him, I had just bought him shoes and clothes and stuff. He can't have any of it. That was a waste of my time and money. School supplies I had for him, they didn't want. Toys that I buy for him, they won't let him keep. I literally can buy my son a little toy, and I can take it to our visit, and we can play with it there. And then I have to bring the toy home. And when I see him again on our visits, I'll bring back whatever toy I just bought for him, and we'll play with it again. They've taken him to California. Took him to California for Thanksgiving, supposedly for a wedding. Never informed me of it. Will try to tell you that they couldn't get in touch with me. They're good about lying about that. Not being able to contact you. It's always your fault, the parent, as to why they can't contact you, to let you know things. And they never let you know these things. You usually find out these things because your child will slip up and say something, whether they mean to or not. They are very physically abusive to my child. They are very mentally abusive to my child. They have my child so afraid and so trained at this point that he literally walks around pretending to be happy. And deal with it. And, they're constantly trying to convince him that everything is my fault. They lie to him constantly. He's a very sweet little boy. None of this is his fault. He doesn't even know I'm making this video. And y'all need to leave him the fuck alone. I'll probably never get him back, but I'm trying like hell. My bogus ass lawyer is supposed to be writing my appeal letter. We'll see how good that goes. I went to trial. Like I said, the judge could only find one reason for the state of Illinois to keep my child, which was he allegedly missed 30 days of school, which they never proved, which he did not miss. That's a fucking lie. Nothing else. Nothing else. They constantly tried to say throughout the court case that I was crazy. Like I said, the child lawyer was constantly saying this out loud in court simply so that it would be typed onto the record. I was constantly pointing out to him he had no actual proof of this and therefore really shouldn't be making false statements in court. At this point, I'm looking at the appellate court, which is basically just a small group of judges that look at your case and decide whether or not the last judge did anything wrong. And if he did, they just send the paperwork back to him, basically to see what could be corrected. There is no further testimony I can give. There's nothing else more I can really say at this point. I'm just waiting on them. And I really could use some help. I could really use some prayers. There's a lot more to my story. I'm exhausted right now. There's way more that they've done to my child and me. I just don't feel like talking about it right now. I just wanted to make this video because I had started the GoFundMe.com/GivePaulBack a month ago and had a few people donate. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I have no job right now. I have no food stamps right now. What I have left is very little as far as I have a place to stay. That's what I mean. I panhandle when I need to ride the bus, when I can't find temporary work through like one of the job apps that I have that sends you temporary work and stuff. It's winter time. It's very cold outside for me right now. I have very physical problems that I have to deal with my body from what happened to me. And it's physical. They're constantly trying to send me away to the crazy house for everything. For everything. You know. Everything. And without proof. That's what they do. If you fight too much for your rights, they either kill you or throw you away in the hospital, where they dope you up and eventually kill you anyway. So I'm kind of just really tired at this point, and it really, I'm scared of what's gonna happen now when people see this video. But if you could feel so to help us, I would appreciate it. If you want to send me an email, I've tried a bunch of different phone numbers already. Please understand that. I've tried different agencies. You could send me their name again. But I don't necessarily need anybody to just sit there and run down a whole bunch of 800 numbers for me. If you want to email me, let it be a little bit more advanced than that, like you are an actual lawyer or you have an actual case similar to mine that maybe you can help me with some advice on it. And like I said, I don't have an income right now, and I can only panhandle a few dollars at a time on the street. So if people could really see it in their heart to help me out, even if it's just this month, to catch up on some things. They, I know I didn't complete the story. It's just very hard at this point to tell you the rest of it. About what all he went through over the past year. They kept him from me. They beat his ass a few times. Anytime he would, he learned to shut the fuck up. He learned to stop telling me things. He learned real quick. Uh, so yeah, he's 9. But okay. Thank you for your time. I'm gonna try to do more videos. I don't have all the knowledge that everybody else has about all this computer stuff. I don't know how to do links and things like that. I'm gonna try to learn. I did start collecting videos. If you look through my playlist, I guess I have a lot of different little playlists that I put together. Um, I was trying to find out what the hell was going on in the world over the past year since they took my son. I started watching YouTube. At first, I was watching his videos that he used to watch, cartoons and stuff, and then I just couldn't do it anymore. It was making me too sad, and I got bored, and I just started having to watch just the random string of videos, not the trending, but just the normal page one day. And I would find a video where I liked the sound of somebody's voice, and I would just let it play in the background, talking about whatever. And so gradually over the past year, I've learned a lot from watching people's videos on YouTube about everything. Um, and it's been a wild experience. I know there are a lot of different videos out there with a lot of different points of view on life. And so, wow. Who knew the apocalypse would be such a fucking circus? It just means the great revealing. That's all. Nothing to be freaked out about. But yeah. I see a lot. I see a lot now that even just a year ago I was unaware of. I would say even a year and a little bit of change ago, I really didn't know who the president was when I first got to Chicago. I had no idea what was going on with all of that. Um, so um, when I say it's scary, you know, to try to be in support of your president, and then you find out why so many people around you hate you for it. You know, I really didn't understand that at first. I just had a vague memory that I had liked the guy. Because you got to remember, I lost my memory about everything. And Mr. Trump has really beautiful eyes, you know. Um, and I really didn't have a bad opinion of him, a bad memory of him, a bad instinct about him. And just a little side note, this is not anything to do with my video, really, but just personal experience. But it was just very weird how I came to find out he was the president. And I really appreciate you and all the people that support you um, and all the work that you guys do. You know, and that's just my personal opinion to say. Um, and I can't say anything beyond him. You know, I can't say that I'm in support of everybody that he's in support of, or he, you know, I'm just giving my personal opinion. And I just thought it was really weird that I ended up in a place that seems to hate a man so much, and I didn't understand why. I mean, they literally protest downtown, like right around Trump Tower, like it's just an abomination. Like I have to work down there sometimes, and it just really puzzled me because I didn't understand it, you know. I understand a lot more now. I've watched a lot more videos now. I'm a little bit more caught up now in the situation with our president and that sort of thing. Um, and I like him. And I liked him. I don't have uh, I can't find a bad memory in my head associated with him necessarily. I just knew he was a good businessman, very kind to people, um, and people had made fun of him for a long time. But I thought that was um, because he was a famous businessman, and it's just how life is. People make fun of you. Um, people make fun of you. People make fun of each other all the time. I don't get upset about that. Like, I find it funny when people make jokes about me, and when I can make jokes about people. Um, and it's very rare. I have to really hate you. Like, you have to work at Primo Shelters or DCFS for me to really hate you. But or Grady Hospital. But anyway, it's just very weird. Like, um, just my having to come back to being a part of society and understanding everything that was going on in the world beyond my little small world, trying to save my son. And the daily interactions that we had with people that we met on the street daily. I didn't watch TV. I don't watch TV. I just get a lot of information now from watching things on my phone. My phone is very small and I can deal with it. So, anyway, I've taken up enough time. Still haven't told the whole story. I'm very exhausted at this point. I'm going to try to rewatch this video. If you've watched any part of this video, which I hope no one has at this point, I don't see anybody watching. Or if you do watch it in the future, it's GoFundMe.com, give Paul back. And I'm going to be making more videos about other people and other people's current story and where they're at in their situation. Because that's something needs to be done now about a lot of these government agencies that have really twisted our court systems. And when the judge gives you an order to do something and you actually have enough nerve to laugh at the judge in his face, and he's sitting there telling you, I know I'm making this a court order, you need to let this woman see her child more. And they, well, we don't have enough staff, and the judge tells you, I can't help the limitations that you have. You need to make this happen. And then your response is another slight laugh, and you're just like, but that's what these people do in court. They run the court. The court doesn't run them. The child lawyer is not there for your child. He's the ranking person, and then the 2 DCFS or 3 DCFS or however many DCFS they bring to court against you. The child lawyer is technically one of their bosses, to be honest with you. That's how that works. So yeah, I'll try to make a more entertaining video next time. I hope I was coherent enough for you to understand my story. And this is video number 1. So, thank you.